Hello, this is your host, Adam Graham, from Pretty Much the Present. And in this video, we'll be bringing you a compilation of old-time radio detective podcasts from 2010. The podcasts are appearing, for the most part, unedited, except for some extraneous or repetitive elements that are being removed because this is a compilation. As I said, these are old, so any websites or offers mentioned may not be valid at the time you're listening unless you find them on our website currently. Now, with that said, here is a week of old-time radio detective podcast. Welcome to the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio. From Boise, Idaho, this is your host, Adam Graham. Got any comments? Email me, box13@greatdetectives.net. Cast your vote for the show on Podcast Alley, podcastalley.greatdetectives.net. And please become a fan of the show on Facebook. We're up to 155 fans. Go to facebook.greatdetectives.net. Well, I don't have a whole lot to say before we get into today's episode of Box 13, but I do want to let you know about our new affiliate program. I've often thought the best thing I could present to you would be Golden Age radio products. However, I couldn't find a way to bring you high-quality items at a reasonable price through an affiliate program, so I held off until now. With Audible.com, you not only can save money on tens of thousands of audiobooks, you can also get high-quality collections of the golden age of radio's greatest shows. One of the most interesting selections, and the one I'll be highlighting at GreatDetectives.net until June, is The Shadow, Night of Darkness. This contains 18 are digitally remastered and restored episodes of The Shadows. This set is unique because it has two newly rediscovered episodes of it. Around 200 episodes have circulated for years. However, a family in Detroit discovered 11 previously unknown episodes of The Shadow and sold the masters to Radio Spirit. These are from the 1938 summer run starring the great Orson Welles. This set features two of those never-released episodes, The Old People and Voice of the Trumpets. There are three ways to get this set. I'll tell you the first one today. Go to GreatDetectives.net, click on the Download a Free Audiobook button, and search for Night of Darkness. You can then download the set for free and get a 14-day trial of Audible, which includes a complimentary audio subscription to the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, as well as access to sample preview chapters for audiobooks. Cancel within the 14 days and you'll owe nothing, but I think you'll like Audible even beyond the trial period. All right, well, let's go ahead and we'll get into today's episode of Box 13. This one is Flash of Light, so we'll listen and then we'll come back.
Box 13. With the star of Paramount Pictures, Alan Ladd as Dan Holliday.
Box 13, care of Star Times. I'm a stranger in your city. I don't know a soul here, but I'm in trouble. At least I think I am. I can't go back home until I know what happened to me yesterday and the day before. It's hard to explain in a letter, but if you'll come to 14 East Central Street,
Believe me, I need help. And maybe you're the one. Jerry Fuller. He needed help, all right. At first, I didn't think he did. I went at the whole thing with my tongue in my cheek, but I put it back where it belonged. Fast. And now, back to Box 13 and Dan Holliday's newest adventure, Flash of Light.
Mr. Holliday. Why can't he go back home? And what does he mean until he finds out what happened to him?
Just that he's lost 2 days out of his life.
Huh. Nobody can do that.
You know, you should go to the movies more often, Susie. Sometimes you get an Academy Award for losing a weekend.
Well, if you ask me, this Jerry Fuller sounds pretty silly. 2 days are hard to mislay. Besides, maybe he's just making a mountain out of a moleskin.
I was wondering when you'd finally kick one around. Now I can leave. For number 14 East Central Street and Mr. Jerry Fuller. East Central Street ran through the part of town where the kids played tiddlywinks with manhole covers. And number 14 was no Ritz. Cheap, shabby rooming house to which paint was just all lang syne. Finding Jerry Fuller was no problem. The landlord pointed down the hallway, and 15 minutes later, Jerry Fuller finished telling me his story. Maybe I looked skeptical because...
You don't believe me, do you?
Oh, sure, I believe the part about the blackout, but...
But you believe I was drunk, is that it?
Well, you admitted having a few.
But not enough to knock me out for a couple of days.
Okay. I'll tell you, and you see how it sounds. You had 2 cocktails before dinner. After dinner, you wandered into the Red Swan and... Say, why did you pick the swankiest spot in town?
Well, just to tell the folks back home I'd been there.
Uh-huh. So you had another drink there. Maybe 2?
All right, 2.
3?
2, I said.
Okay, take 2. They're small. But were you alone at the Red Swan?
Well, maybe I talked to somebody, like people do at bars, but I was alone.
Remember to whom you talked?
No.
Remember anything at all?
Well, I don't know, but I kind of remember a flash of light. It sticks in my head.
Flash of light? I've got another flash for you. That was your second drink.
Look, I can't go back home until I know what happened.
Maybe you'd better tell me why not.
Well, all right, I guess maybe it's better if you do know.
So Jerry told me a story that had happened a million times before.
3 days ago.
A small-town kid in a big city.
I'm gonna be
And a few drinks that were like dynamite to a kid who never had anything stronger than malted milks. And there was a girl he couldn't remember. And another girl back home, the girl he was supposed to marry. I listened and knew every word that was coming. I could have even added a few that he had left out. But when he finished...
And that's why I can't go to the police. If I did, they'd have to wire back home for...
Verification of your identity?
Well, that's it. And everybody back home would know, find out.
I know this is throwing cold water in your face, Jerry, but don't you think you'd better take your medicine? Chalk up the experience to... experience.
Oh, now, wait a minute. Look, my wallet.
What about it?
Every cent I had, even my ticket back home, is gone.
You did a good job.
Listen, if you or anybody else can prove I was robbed, then I've got an explanation. I've got a reason.
Okay, I'll give it a whirl. But I think it's cut and dried before we get around to it. Now, the first thing to do is to get you out of this fire trap.
But where can I go?
My apartment. I'll lend you the money to get back home.
I won't go back home until I know what happened, how I got here, and why.
All right, Jerry. Leave it at that. Now, come on. Hey, wait, where's your baggage?
Well, I checked it at the depot before I went to the Red Swan.
Oh, I'll pick it up for you. Now, come on, let's get out of here. Sure, I humored him. The poor kid was scared stiff, and like any frightened kid, was building up a big thing in his mind. But there was one thing that bothered me. The place Jerry said he had been in before he blanked out, the Red Swan. It wasn't a hangout for cheap crooks and nickel snatchers. It was ultra swank, and the odds were heavy against anyone taking him over the boards in there. Okay, maybe he went somewhere else afterward. We got to the front door, and I sent Jerry to the car to wait for me.
Hello.
Well, hello.
What's your name?
Dan, what's yours?
Kitty.
Okay, Kitty. Is your daddy in?
Uh-huh.
What's the matter? Who are you?
Remember me?
Yeah, you find the guy?
Yeah.
He was with a real pretty lady.
Shut up, Kitty. Go back in the kitchen.
All right.
She's a cute little kid.
So? That what you come to tell me?
I didn't come to tell you anything. I want to ask.
What?
Who brought Jerry Fuller here?
Dame?
Sure of that?
Yeah, sure, I'm sure. That all you want to know?
That all you can tell me?
What else?
Was he drunk?
Mister, I didn't ask him.
Who was the girl?
I didn't stop to get introduced. Look, she brings him here, says she's his wife, gives me a couple of days' rent, that's it.
Did she leave right away?
What do you want from me, a quiz game?
Did she leave right away?
I don't know. I showed him the room, I got my dough. I don't push questions, see?
She gave you 2 days' rent, huh?
So long, mister.
What'd you do up there, Mr. Holliday?
Got unpopular? Okay, Jerry, now we'll go to my apartment. Feeling better?
Yes, a lot. Thanks.
Now, we'd better see about shipping you back home.
Oh, but you said you were going to help.
I am, and the best way I do that is to ship you out of the big city. You come back in, say, 10 years.
You think I'm just a kid that got in bad, don't you?
Well, you were at the church social for 2 days, Jerry.
And I'm telling you, I was robbed.
So you were.
What can I tell the folks back home?
What you told me.
Oh, you don't understand, Mr. Holliday. Mr. Simmons,
Mr. Simmons? Who's he?
he's Millie's father.
Oh? And Millie, I take it, is the girl back home.
You're making fun of me.
No, I'm not, Jerry, not at all. But the best thing you can do is face the music. You won't be able to dance to it, but, well, it's the best way.
I don't know.
Now, you wait here. I'll run to the depot and get your baggage. Here, yeah. Got the check for it?
Yeah, it's the only thing they left me. I had it in the inside compartment of my wallet.
All right, Jerry. Now that we've got it figured, you'll feel better. I'll see you later. You'll feel better, I said. Huh. Everybody makes mistakes, but just how big can they get? I went to the depot, picked up the one valise Jerry had left there, and hurried back to my apartment. The automatic elevator was just coming down to ground level. Oops. I'm sorry.
Yeah? How sorry?
I beg your pardon?
What for? Keep your eyes in front, pal, and you won't run into people.
Just a minute. You came out of that elevator a little too fast.
So? That's the way I always move. Objections?
I might have.
Like what?
You don't live in the building, do you?
Nah, I own it. So long, punk. I mean, so long, Holiday.
Holiday? I didn't know him, but he knew me, and he came from upstairs. Something told me that character had been in my apartment. I got in the elevator, pressed the floor button. I never realized until then how slow those things can move. Then... Jerry! Jerry, what happened?
Nothing.
Look at me, Jerry. I said, look at me. Oh, no.
I'm all right.
Yeah, sure, you're all right. Like you ran into a meat chopper. Jerry, who was that man?
There wasn't anybody.
Now, listen to me. There was somebody here. He just left.
I tell you, there wasn't anybody. Give me my police.
You may now sit down.
Let me go.
Be quiet now. Be quiet now. Sit down. Now, why did he go for you?
Nobody did.
Sure. You poked your face in an electric fan to see the pretty blades go around. Come on, Jerry, talk.
I'm going back home.
Whoever that was saw us at the place I picked you up. Followed us, waited until I left, then came up here. What did he say? What do you want?
Nothing.
I cut it out. You wanted help, I'll give it now.
I don't want it. All I want to do is get out of here and go back home.
All right, Jerry. But you've got to get cleaned up first.
Yeah.
Go in the bathroom, wash up. Got to change your shirts in this valise.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
You're going to let me go?
Why not? You won't talk. You won't let me help.
Oh, Mr. Holliday, believe me,
Are we going to say?
Nothing. I'll get cleaned up.
Okay, Jerry. Have it your way.
Sure, and thanks. Thanks anyway.
Towels in the back of the door.
Honest, Mr. Holliday, I appreciate what you've done, but I know now I just got to go back and do like you said.
Yeah, sure be a good little boy and wander back home.
I can finish cleaning up on the train.
Let me see your wallet.
What?
Well, you got to have money. Count it as a loan. Send it back later.
Oh, sure, here.
Ah. Now, suppose you answer a question.
Huh? Oh, what?
How do you explain this? Your railroad ticket. It's back.
Well, I guess I must have overlooked it before.
Stop lying.
I'm not.
Okay. Here. $10, your wallet, your valise. Now, there's the door.
You're mad, huh?
So long, Jerry.
Goodbye.
Police headquarters. Griffin speaking.
Lieutenant Kling, please.
Homicide, Kling.
Hello, Kling. This is Dan.
Well, my heart's desire. What are you...
We'll make with the jokes and funny patter some other time. Right now, I want to work fast.
Huh?
A man just left my apartment. He's on his way to the railroad station. Pick him up.
Are you nuts?
Here's what he looks like. 5'7", light brown hair. Wears horn-rimmed glasses. No hat, dark blue serge suit, carrying a suitcase with the initials JF on it, a foot high. Even some of your boys could spot it.
Now take a breath and listen to me. I can't order a guy picked up because you want to play games. You gotta have a charge.
Pick him up and I'll sign the complaint later. You'll find my wallet in his valise.
And now back to Flash of Light, another Box 13 adventure with Alan Ladd as Dan Holliday.
It was a nasty way to keep Jerry in town, but it was the only way to keep him and still tuck him away where he wouldn't be the target for the night. Kling and I asked him questions, but if he'd been scared before, he was twice as scared now. And the second scare was big enough to make him forget what he wanted to find out. Why he had been Mickeyed and packed off into that boarding house on East Central. But I was real curious about it, and because Kling had nothing to work on, I was on my own. I went back to East Central Street. I knew I wouldn't get anything out of the landlord, but I spotted little Kitty. And I remembered something she had said, so I asked her.
Uh-huh. And there was a real pretty lady.
Well, did you hear her name, Kitty?
Uh-uh.
Do you remember if she left right away?
Uh-huh. She did.
In a car?
Oh, it was a taxi cab. Why?
I want to find her.
She had red hair and a real pretty fur coat.
Oh, well, that's nice. But when she got into the taxi, Kitty, were you near her?
Uh-huh. I like to look at her red hair and her pretty coat.
Now, think carefully, Kitty. Did you hear her say anything to the driver of that taxi?
Uh-huh.
What?
She told him where to go.
Where?
Where she told him.
Oh, I know, but where did she tell him? What did she say?
245.
245 what?
Well, that's the number of the street, I guess.
Did you hear the street?
Uh-huh.
What was it?
It wasn't a street. She said avenue.
All right, Kitty, that's fine so far. Now, what was the name of the avenue?
245.
That's the number of the avenue.
Uh-uh.
You just said it was.
Oh, no, I didn't. I said 245 Avenue.
What avenue?
245.
Look, Kitty,
I gotta go play now. Goodbye, miss.
Kitty, wait, Well, that was that. Dead end. And I was 10 minutes and 2 miles away when it hit me. Kitty was right. The number was 245th Avenue. A half hour later, I was there. And it took $10 to bribe the clerk in the apartment house to give me the name of the real pretty lady with the red hair and pretty fur coat. And a couple of minutes later...
That you, Marty?
Yeah, Beth?
What's the idea of showing up this late? Hey.
And a high nonny.
What's the idea?
Oh, pardon the intrusion.
You get out of here. Who are you, anyway?
I'm the man who makes the survey.
Survey? What survey?
Are you listening to your radio?
What do you want?
Answers. Have you got any?
You ain't a cop.
Expecting one?
Get out.
Sit down, Beth. I've got questions to ask about a kid named Jerry Fuller. Nobody could call you Little Poker Face.
Meaning what?
Meaning that name was a direct hit.
You're crazy. Now you get out of here before I call a cop.
Okay. Alexander Graham Bell was a great man. He saved us a lot of steps and bother. Go on. Call the police.
Oh, you don't think I will, huh?
Maybe. But when they get here, they might ask questions about Jerry Fuller and why he was drugged, framed, and holed up on East Central.
I said you're crazy.
Oh, yes, I know you did. Well?
Listen, I don't know who you are or what you're doing here, but I'm going to give you a break. You don't look like a bad guy. Maybe a nut, but you can go and we'll forget this.
I don't want to forget it.
I'll take it from here, Beth.
Well, hello. If it isn't my elevator friend.
How did you get here, Holiday?
I drove. Why?
I thought maybe you crawled, because that might be the way you get out.
Marty, don't start nothing here, please.
Shut up. What did you do, leave a trail, dope?
No. I don't know how this guy got here.
What are you doing here, Holiday?
I want to know why that kid Jerry Fuller was framed the way he was.
Just Just curious, Holiday?
Maybe.
You don't know, huh? Okay. Okay, so you don't know. That's nice and healthy for you, Holiday. Because if you did know, well, you forced your way in here, and I have a perfect right to use this.
I could find out.
Maybe from your pal Fuller, huh?
Mm-hmm. Could be.
Okay, go ask him. But get out of here and don't come back again, or I might not be so nice about it. Come on, beat it.
I might be back.
I might be waiting.
Maybe you let me in on a secret, Holiday. Just where are you heading?
Kling, I want to talk to Jerry Fuller.
Fuller? You kidding? We let him out.
Out? I told you I'd show up and sign the complaint.
Sure, then Susie walks in and tells us you've decided not to sign a complaint. No charge.
Susie?
Yeah, Susie.
Let me use your phone.
Why not? You've used the whole police department. Why stop at a phone?
Hello?
Susie?
Oh, hello, Mr. Holliday. Where are you?
Never mind that. Did you go to the police and tell them to drop my charge against Jerry Fuller?
Well, yes.
Why?
Because you told me to.
I told you to. Susie, what's the matter with you?
But you did. That I should go to the police and tell them you didn't want to.
Oh, okay, Susie.
Did I do something wrong? Or right?
It doesn't matter now.
Well, didn't she?
Yeah, but it's not her fault. It looked like a legitimate message from me because she knew I got that letter from Jerry Fuller.
Oh, now I get it. Box 13 again. I'm not superstitious, but I'm going to be if I know you much longer.
Listen, somebody wanted Fuller out of here. Out of the way because that somebody is afraid of what Fuller knows. Now what?
How do I know? I just got off the bench to come in the game.
Kling, that kid's in danger. We've got to find him.
Maybe you better start from the beginning so I can at least look intelligent about it.
All right. Fuller sent a letter to Box 13. He wanted me to help him because he was afraid to go back home before he knew what had happened.
All right. That's the story. But Fuller can't know anything because he said he was blanked out.
We've got to find him. There must be something he knows.
Okay, hold on. Sergeant, get a description of Jerry Fuller from the clerk. Left here about half hour ago. Put out a dragnet for him. Watch bus, railroad, plane terminals. Right away.
Good boy.
Now, one more thing. This Marty character you talked about. Short?
Yeah. He's stocky, little scar on his chin. Clothes were neat, but gaudy.
I thought so. Marty Kane.
Oh, you know him?
Every police department in the country knows him. Killer, hired by anyone who can pay his price.
Killer. Got anything on him?
No, Stooley's tipped us off he was in town. 2 days after he gets here, Billy Dupree was killed.
Dupree?
Yeah, he was going to be state's witness against Billy Farn. We thought nobody knew it. Oh, we gave Dupree protection, but not enough. Kane got to him.
And you lose the fraud case against Farn.
Yeah.
But if we can get Fuller back, you'll have a case against Kane and Farn.
If Fuller talks.
What do we do now?
If you got any fingernails left, start working on them while we wait.
We waited 2 hours, then 3 hours. Kling and I stared at each other, each of us afraid of, to say what he was thinking. That Jerry Fuller would be dead when they found him. There was one point against that, though. The fact that it must have been Marty Kane who went to Susie with that fake message from me. She could identify him. And if Fuller was killed...
Let me go. I tell you, let me go. I didn't do anything.
That's all, Sergeant. I'll check over. Come on in, Fuller.
What have you got me back here for? Mr. Holliday.
Look, Jerry, you're a very lucky boy you're not decorating the bottom of the river right now.
You're safe here, kid. Nobody can get at you here.
What do you want? I don't know anything.
Maybe you do.
I told you I don't. I was on my way home. Why
Jerry.
don't you let me...
Jerry, that night in the Red Swan. What did you see or hear that put Marty Kane after you?
I don't know any Marty Kane. I never even heard the name before.
He was the man who beat you up in my apartment.
I didn't know him. I never saw him before in my...
But you did. Why did you stop talking just then?
I don't know. Maybe I talked to him at the cocktail bar at the Red Swan. I don't know.
You talked to him at the Red Swan. Did he tell you anything about a man named Dupree?
Dupree? No, I tell you, it's all hazy.
Look, Dan, a guy like Kane wouldn't pay to anybody. Just doesn't make sense.
And why is Kane anxious to get Jerry out of town?
If this kid knew anything, Kane wouldn't let him live 10 seconds.
And what's the angle? Jerry, did you ever hear of a man named Billy Farn?
No, I didn't, and I don't know why Kane's after me. All I want to do is go home.
Wait a minute. Fuller, when did you get into town?
4 days ago, the 10th.
The 10th? You sure?
Yes.
What's the matter with that, Kling?
Everything. Because Dufresne was killed on the 5th. 5 days before this kid even got near this town.
That made it better than ever for people who like puzzles that don't fit together. But there had to be a reason for the whole thing, and because I believed that, I headed for the Red Swan. I went to the cocktail bar and looked around. I didn't know what I expected to find, but, well, maybe nothing. Then there was a flash of light. A flash of light. A flash bulb set off by a camera girl, one of those who take pictures in nightclubs. And that was it. 2 flashes of light, one from the bulb and another in my head when the idea hit me. It took me 10 minutes to find the man who owned the concession.
Yes, sir. We keep all negatives. They're numbered and dated.
Got the ones for the night of the 12th?
Sure, but I can't show them to you.
Oh, look. Check first with Lieutenant Kling, police. He'll tell you it's okay for me to look through those negatives and find the one I want. How big can you project this thing, Kling?
As big as you want. The lab made a positive from the neg you got. You ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
Big enough?
Plenty. Jerry, recognize that picture?
Yeah. I had the girl take one of me at the bar for a souvenir to take back home.
But you haven't got that picture now.
Well, no, I forgot all about it.
Jerry, at the bar, you were a little tipsy. You got talkative. You showed the picture to somebody. Was it Kane?
Well, I don't know. It could have been.
So what, then? What's this picture got to do with it?
Don't look at Jerry, Kling. Look at the figures in the background. Enlarge it a little more.
That what you want? Hey, that's Marty Kane.
Yeah, taking money from someone.
And that someone is Billy Farn's leg man.
Well, you got your case, Kling. Farn's leg man paying off Kane for killing Dufresne.
Better look at it in the light, Dan. This picture shows Kane getting money. Okay, so what? A smart lawyer could make up a dozen reasons. Kane won it from Farn. He was getting change from the leg man.
But coupled with this business about Jerry Fuller, it would stand up in court.
Fuller hasn't been hurt. Kane was smart that way.
Yeah, Hey, listen. You want a case.
But how?
Let me have that negative and listen to your Uncle Dan for a few minutes. Good evening, Marty.
So, you did come back, huh?
Uh-huh. Want to talk to me?
Sure, come on in.
Oh, leaving town, Marty? So you're all packed.
Maybe you better do the same.
I like it here.
You must. Now beat it.
I thought you were smart, Marty.
What?
You got the picture from Jerry Fuller, but there's always the negative. You've got a much better poker face than your girlfriend. But you've batted an eyelash.
Marty, who is it? Oh, you.
Sit down and stay out of the way, Beth.
Well, Marty?
So you got the negative, huh?
Maybe. You should have thought of it. But that's the trouble with you smart boys. You play ring around the rosy and get yourselves dizzy.
What's your angle?
Nothing. Oh, and before you pull that trigger, there are cops all around this place.
Marty.
Shut up. This guy's pulling a bluff.
So? Now, why don't you be smart this time, Marty, and go along quietly? The police could use your evidence.
Turned stooly, huh? Nothing doing.
Marty, come back.
You'll see him again, Beth. Let him run.
They'll kill him. They did. They killed him.
Oh, no, Beth. Kling's too good a shot to kill his best witness.
But what about Jerry? Did he go back home?
That he did, Susie. And right now, he's probably a hero in his hometown.
Gee. And all because of a flash in the pan.
Huh?
I made a joke. Get it? Face, pan. Flash in the pan.
Oh, good night, Susie.
Next week, same time, through the courtesy of Paramount Pictures, Alan Ladd stars as Dan Holliday in Box 13. Box 13 is directed by Richard Sandville, with an original story by Russell Hughes. Original music is composed and conducted by Rudy Schrager. The part of Susie is played by Sylvia Pickard, and that of Lieutenant Kling by Edmund MacDonald. Production is supervised by Vern Karstensen. This is a Mayfair production from Hollywood. Watch for Alan Ladd in his latest Paramount picture.
Welcome back. Well, once again, we see villainous paranoia at work. So, if I get it, understand this. This Marty Kane guy was afraid that somebody who had a personal picture taken, is him in the background with somebody who was paying him off, might lead to his undoing, because he might happen to show it to a prosecutor, I guess. Well, who said the criminal mind works logically at all times? Of course, the name of the villain here, Marty Kane, is interesting because a few years later, in 1949, Martin Kane actually premiered as a detective series, which, and I've actually heard the name Marty Kane used several times as a villain. And I bet once, when they found out there was a Martin Kane series coming out with Martin Kane as the name, that there were a lot of radio writers who just went, darn, now we can't use that one again. Comment from Otto on Podcast Alley. Love the podcast. I would love to see Rogues Gallery and the Adventures of the Falcon added, though. Well, thanks so much, and we'll be doing Rogues Gallery possibly, maybe soon. We'll see. Well, not a whole lot to talk about regarding today's episode of Jeff Regan before we get started. I do want to kind of continue on what I was telling you yesterday about our new affiliate program when I was laying out the different ways that you could get The Shadow, Night of Darkness, with 2 new episodes of The Shadow on it. The first way I mentioned is free by signing up for a 2-week free trial with Audible. You can also sign up for an extended trial with Audible, where you pay $7.95 for the first 3 months. So you get an audiobook or old-time radio set, whichever you'd prefer, once a month for the next 3 months at $7.95. Really gives you a chance to test drive it and also to try out the audio subscription to the New York Times or Wall Street Journal. So far, at the time of this recording, I've listened to 4 of the Shadow episodes, including the new ones, and they're great. Quality is good. I also was kind of confirmed, these don't really go on the great detectives. This is more definitely early superhero stuff. If you're into superheroes, you're going to enjoy The Shadow. And there's one more way you can get the Shadow, Night of Darkness, and I will tell you about that on tomorrow's show. But let's go ahead and we're going to get into today's episode of Jeff Regan, The Man in the Door.
My name is Jeff Regan. I get 10 a day and expenses from a detective bureau run by a guy named Lyon. Anthony J. Lyon. They call me the Lion's Eye.
With Jack Webb as Jeff Regan investigator, stand by for hard-boiled action, mystery, and thrilling adventure in tonight's story of The Man in the Door.
Well, this is the way it started. The Lion called about 4 o'clock that afternoon. Said he wanted to see me down at the office. I argued a while and finally told him I'd be there. Melody was sitting in front of her typewriter when I came in, putting a new coat of paint on her nails. She handed me a blank contract with no dates filled in, jerked a thumb toward the Lion's den. I went in.
Regan, I'm glad you got here. What do you know about architects?
They draw things.
I know that much, but what about bids and all that stuff?
Well, they figure out what a building's going to cost, don't they?
Go on.
If whoever's paying for the building likes what they write down, then they're hired.
A couple of architects, maybe 3 or 4, make bids.
Well, I suppose so. Low man gets the job. Why?
Our client's an architect named Dudley Haynes, an office in the Park Central building.
He thinks maybe the bank that's handling his bid might try to put something over on him.
Banks don't do things like that.
He thinks maybe a guy who works at the bank might be taking dough to shove his bid under the counter.
Why didn't you say that in the first place?
Because I'm saying it now. Haynes wants us to look into it.
All right, who do I see?
Haynes first. I only talked to him on the phone. I told him we'd have to have a contract and retainer before we did anything.
That figures.
So hop over there and find out what's what and make him sign that contract and get a check.
Anything else?
Make sure it's certified and call me if you run into any trouble.
Dudley Haynes, architect, Park Central Building, had an office on the 9th floor. When I went in, a girl with hair that figured to be blonde right down to the roots pulled off her glasses and put out her cigarette. Then she kind of eased out of her chair behind that desk and moved toward me, like a panther looking for a meal.
My, you're tall, aren't you?
Well, there's nothing I can do about that.
Mr. Lyon said he was sending us one of his best men.
He always says that.
I think he meant it this time.
He's an awful liar, lady.
Dorothy. Dorothy Nolan.
Fitz.
The name or the dress?
Both.
What's yours?
Jeff Regan.
Well, now we know each other.
That's nice. I came to see Haynes. He wants me to look into something for him.
I know.
He's expecting me.
I know.
Well?
I hope you have to look into a lot of things.
For Haynes?
No.
This is his office, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. But he spends most of his time in 902 into the hall. Makes his blueprints up there. I'll take you. You are tall.
Well, we started down the hall. We got about 10 feet from the frosted glass door at the end. We both stopped. We were looking at the outline of a big man behind the door. Both of us expected him to open it and walk out. Oh, he came out all right, but he walked right through it. Oh, he's been shot.
Oh.
You know him?
It's my boss, Mr. Haynes.
No, it was your boss, lady. He's dead. Lieutenant Salvatore Wendetti, Central Homicide Detail, showed up about 8 minutes after I called. He had his whole goon squad with him and a couple of guys in double-breasted suits from the district attorney's office. They roped off the entrance to the building, got hold of the elevator operators, the man who runs the cigar stand, and asked some questions. Then Wendetti looked at what was left of Haynes and started yelling into a phone.
It's going to blast it over, but don't move until my fingerprint boys get through. Yeah. Okay, sis, where the guy lives?
At the Biltmore Hotel.
Where's his wife?
We didn't have one.
Who do we tell?
We didn't have any family.
So no one's going to cry. Well, that makes it easier. Regan, was he your client?
No, nobody's a client until they sign a contract, Sally.
Well, you would bring him a contract to sign, and then you would do something for him. What?
Well, I didn't talk to him.
Sis?
Mr. Haynes had made an estimate on a little office building in Beverly Hills. He thought that a man named Adler at the bank might be taking money from someone to hold his bid out.
So he wants an investigator to look into it. Why do you think that?
Well, I don't know.
You work for him.
Well, I don't know everything.
Neither do I. Hot, isn't it? Who's Adler?
Oh, just a name to me.
Who else?
Who else?
Architects. Who else was making a bid?
I don't know that.
Now, where are we? Tully!
Yes?
Guy named Adler at the
Grand
National Bank. Pick him up and have him down to my office in half an hour.
Yep. What do you want to do about reporters, Sally?
Tell him to go jump in the lake.
Yep.
They always spell my name wrong. How long you two known each other?
An hour?
Nice.
What do you mean by that?
Just nice. Didn't hear any shots?
No, we didn't.
Tell me more about the bid.
What's there to tell?
The setup.
Well, the bank handles the money.
Who says yes, who says no?
The bank, but...
But what?
The contractor usually tells them who to take.
Huh? Who's that in this case?
Contractor in Long Beach, his name is George Cantrell.
I'll say this to you, Regan. When you get mixed up in anything, you certainly get mixed up with the good-looking people.
I'm not mixed up in anything.
What do you say, sis?
I'll keep my mouth shut.
She's a smart girl, Regan. Hello, honey. Won't be home for dinner. Some guy got himself killed and I'm in on it. Not long, no. Regan? I'll tell him. Wife says hello. Says to come out to dinner sometime. Sis, how much that contract worth?
Oh, in the building in Beverly Hills, about $40,000.
Profit?
No, overall.
Break it down.
Well, Mr. Haynes would have cleared about $12,000 if he'd gotten it.
I know some guys who killed for a dime. Sam, Wendetti. I'm still at the Park Central building. Get out to Long Beach and talk to a contractor named George Cantrell. And find out what architects were making bids on some stuff he was going to put up in Beverly Hills. Yeah, get the name. Okay, that about does it. Let's go. Miss Nolan?
What?
I have to take you down.
Jeff, can you do that?
Well, you're a material witness.
What are you?
He's a bystander with a built-in lawyer.
Well, I do, Jeff.
Go with him.
Why do you want to spend the night in jail? I just worked for Mr. Haynes.
No phone calls. This is a murder case.
Well, get me a lawyer or something, Jeff.
You know a lawyer?
No. Wait, yes, I do. His name's Dave Henderson. He lives at 1648 Claremont Place. Will you see him for me? Tell him I'm in trouble.
Yeah. Check, Sally?
She didn't make a phone call, and I like her, too.
Well, look, he may not be able to do anything for you tonight. It's almost 6.
But you'll see him as soon as possible.
Yeah?
Tell him I'm scared, Jeff. I'm scared still.
Well, I stayed there and phoned the Lyon, told him what had happened. Well, he got mad and yelled something about me being a jinx on all our clients, and then he hung up. So I went through the classified telephone directory under attorneys and Henderson. There was a Ben, a George, a Joe, a William, but no Dave Henderson. So I drove out to the address that she'd given me. It was a blue apartment house 4 blocks west of Vermont over by the Coliseum. Somebody was cooking hamburgers somewhere, and somebody was all worked up over a ball game on the radio. I picked the baseball fan.
Well, what'll happen now is anybody's guess, but let me tell you that this ball game is a long way from being up. Hey, what'd I tell you? It's outside the ballpark, and they're coming in like homing pigeons. Bases are loaded, and they're all coming in. Oh, it's going to be 8-5.
Come on, the ball game's not that good.
What's so important, Pilgrim? I'm with the ball game.
I'm looking for a man named Dave Henderson, a lawyer.
So what?
Well, somebody told me he lives in this apartment house.
Who told you that?
A lady.
Ha!
Does he live here?
You try looking at the mailbox?
No names.
You cop?
Private type.
Ha!
Does he live here?
Sure he lives here.
Well, where?
End of the hall, 106.
Thanks.
So he's a lawyer, is he? With his kind of friends? Ha!
What does that mean?
You're young, ain't you, Curly?
I got a driver's license.
Let me tell you something. Don't go knocking on no doors and hear a ball game. Remember that.
Yeah, I'll remember
And
that.
you can tell him Tessie Bogart to start to that one.
And the score is 8-5 coming into the first half of the ninth, and this has been some ball game, let me tell you.
106. Here we are.
Come on in, it's unlocked.
Your name Dave Henderson?
Yeah, who wants to know?
My name's Regan. I'm a private investigator with the International Detective Bureau.
Wrong steer gumshoe, I don't need one.
Look, I'm not looking for work. I'm looking for you.
What'd you say it was? Regan?
That's right.
R-E-G-A-N. Regan. Regan. Learned that just an hour ago. Cute, huh?
I met a friend of yours today.
Dave Henderson never had a friend.
She said she was a friend of yours.
But I didn't say I was a friend of hers. Hey, who are we talking about anyway?
Dorothy Nolan.
How is Dorothy?
Not so good.
Thought you were a detective.
I am.
You sound like a doctor.
Look, you sound like a guy with a chip on his shoulder.
Sound like a lot of things. You're trying to be tough, baby.
No wonder you aren't in the telephone directory.
I'll just skip that.
She said you were a lawyer.
I say I drink too much. You haven't seen me drinking, have you?
She wants you to get in touch with her. The man she was working for was murdered today.
She kill him?
Well, they're holding her.
Material witness or suspect?
Material witness right now. She doesn't want to spend the night in jail.
Who does? That's why she isn't feeling so good, huh? He wants me to get her out.
Something like that.
Who's handling the case downtown?
Detective named Wendetti.
And where do you come in?
Well, they didn't give her that one phone call.
Uh-huh. You're sensing me. What if I said no?
Well, that's your business.
You know why she asked you to see me? Because I'm a guy she knows. And every guy who knows little Dorothy does a little something for her. Ever met him like that, Regan?
Sometimes.
I'm just checking.
Checking what?
She's pretty good with the works. Eyes just right for the job. Hair just right. Everything just right. She can make you do a lot of things you don't want to do. Wait till you see her in a bathing suit. Ooh, that's something, brother.
Well, they aren't wearing them in the county jail.
Okay, I'll phone Wendetti and find out what her bond is.
Look, this is a murder case. There's no bond on this. You know that.
Well, depends how you handle it. I'll think of something.
Yeah, I'll bet you will.
We don't like each other much, do we?
Nope.
That's the way it goes.
Listen, she said to tell you she was scared.
Well, some of us are scared part of the time. And somebody gets shot. And everybody gets scared. You scared?
Nope.
Iron Man Regan. Have a good time.
Did I say Haynes was shot?
No. You didn't say a thing. See you somewhere, Peeper.
Well, I stopped by Musso Frank's and had the special, and then I went on home. I tried to make a couple of calls, but Wendetti was out, and the desk sergeant thought I was a reporter, and he wouldn't tell me a thing about Dorothy Nolan. While I was sitting there, the phone began jumping around on the hook.
Regan?
Yeah.
This is me. Where you been? I called your place 20 times, but I've called it once.
Well, I've been busy seeing a lawyer.
What do you need a lawyer for? You aren't married.
Somebody else needs one.
Who?
Dorothy Nolan, that blonde who worked up in Haynes' office. Wendetti's holding her.
Good. I want you to go down and see her.
What for?
We can still make something on this thing if we play it smart. And when I talked to Haynes on the phone this afternoon, I told him I wanted a certified check.
So what?
So that means there's a check for $100 lying around his office somewhere. And it's made out to International.
Look, he's dead, remember?
Everybody dies. Don't worry about it.
We weren't even hired.
We had a verbal contract.
We had nothing.
That check's no good to anybody but us.
We didn't do anything for him.
We'll buy him some flowers. Now hop down to the pokey and see that dame and find out where that check is.
We can't do that.
I talked to Harry Presidio, and he'll give us a lien to get in. Hello? Hello? Regan, you still there?
I was still there, but I wasn't listening to the Lion. I was looking at a skinny little man with one leg.
Regan, you still there?
Now, don't ask me how he made it inside my door. He was just there, propped up on a pair of crutches, swaying back and forth, watching me with a couple of sick gray eyes that were so full of water you'd think they were going to float right out of his head. All at once, he went down like a busted sugar sack. He'd been shot twice through the neck with a small caliber gun, a 25, 32, I don't know. I found a dozen razor blades in one pocket and 2 dozen sets of shoelaces to go with them. There wasn't anything that told me his name, but there was a picture inside his shirt pocket. One of those things that you have taken in a penny arcade, you know, in front of phony pasteboard props. Well, the man with one leg was looking out from between a pair of painted angel's wings. And the guy standing next to him, who was smiling up at the halo, was the same man that I'd seen that afternoon. An architect named Haynes. A man who needed a private detective. A man who walked out a glass door and then dropped dead. And the one printed word above that picture stuck out like a wart on an egg that said, Happy Land.
You are listening to the story of the man in the door. Tonight's adventure with Jeff Regan, investigator. Here is a special and important message to every businessman listening. To every businessman, regardless of the size or the type of his business. Gentlemen, do you realize that the schools of this community help you every day that you're in business? That's right. For one thing, our schools teach the boys and girls of this community to cherish the human rights, the free enterprise on which our country and your business are founded. With each new generation graduated from our schools, the Army defending our way of life, and your business grows stronger. What's more, good teachers and well-equipped schools do a better job of developing our children's talents. The result? School graduates who become more skilled and more efficient employees. So remember, any time and taxes that you contribute to improving local schools are an investment in your own business future. Education is good business. Education can maintain our freedom. And freedom is everybody's job. And now, back to the story of the man in the door and Jeff Regan, investigator.
Well, I left the little man with the one leg lying there. There wasn't much I could do for him. I wanted to wait before I called homicide. I took the picture I found in his pocket and I drove to Happy Land. It turned out to be an open-air penny arcade on 5th and Main. Smelled like all the hot dogs in the world had been made right there. There were machines all over the place telling you how strong you were, how rich you'd be, and who you'd marry. All for a penny. I guess it wasn't much of a bargain. The only customer was a sailor trying his luck at the shooting gallery. Back in the corner, a tired-looking girl in light blue slacks and a dirty gray sweater was sitting on a stool by the hot dog counter staring at nothing.
Want some pennies?
Not right now, no.
Oh, just looking? Go ahead. When you figure out where you're going to spend your money, come back and I'll give you some change.
You got a picture gallery here?
Oh. Don't tell me you're a real big spender and want to have your picture taken.
Maybe. You got one?
Yeah, we got one.
Where is it?
In there. If you really want to get your picture taken, I'll climb off this stool and take you back. I want to tell you now, if you're just trying to be sociable, you can go and fly a kite.
You run the picture concession?
I run the picture place and the hot dog place, and I sweep out in the mornings. Oh, I wish I had better brains than to marry that slob and get myself stuck in a cheap dump like this.
All right. Do you remember taking this picture?
How would I know? I take a lot of pictures.
Well, come on, look at it.
All right. Yeah, I took it. That's what sold you?
When?
How do you think I am? Can't remember what night it is every time a pair of drunks comes in and wants their pictures taken together.
Well, try to remember, will you?
You're a real wise guy, mister. You don't want no picture. You just want some talk. You a cop?
Friend. I met the little guy in the picture once.
Dusty?
What was that?
I thought you said you met him once.
Well, we weren't introduced. I just met him. Who is he?
Dusty Rhodes. He works the circuit.
What circuit?
5th and Main, STEM. Business section.
What kind of business?
Dusty handled the razor blade and shoelace traffic. He hates pencils.
What did he do when he wasn't working?
What does anybody do? He went out and got loaded.
Go on.
Now, you don't know him very well for a friend. How am I going to know I'm not getting Dusty in trouble talking to you like this?
Nobody can get him in trouble anymore, lady.
What do you mean?
He was shot tonight.
Oh, no. Oh, poor little guy.
Do you know where he lived?
Seashore Hotel. The Seashore Hotel. Oh, gee, Miss, I'm sick. Oh, I'm real sick.
Brother, the seashore caters to many types of people, good and bad, just out of the pokey. 2 bits a night for transients, $1.50 a week for solid citizens. And sign and register, it's a law.
I'm not looking for a room.
Then you're wasting my time, brother. My beer's getting warm.
Look, I'm a private investigator. My name's Regan.
I liked you before you said them 2 words, brother, but you have soured me. Private investigator means private eye, and it all means cop. And you are not welcome. Now blow.
I'm trying to find out something about a man named Dusty Rhodes.
We do not ask questions, and we do not give answers. Now blow.
I was told he lived here.
You find me tongueless, brother. Now blow.
Did you know him?
During the last 5 years, I have acquired 85 pounds and a very bad heart, or I'd have you in the alley right now.
Oh, yeah, sure you would. Here.
Abraham Lincoln was a very fine man, and he took a very fine picture. I seem to have found my tongue, brother. What'll it be?
The key to his room for a starter, huh?
Disallowable and punishable by fine and imprisonment. Into the hall, turn the bent vest door to the right.
Thanks. Well, I don't know what I expected to find there. Outside of more razor blades and more shoelaces was a little room full of dirty white curtains and a wire bed that sagged in the middle. I was standing there watching a neon sign advertise beer a block down the street when I thought I heard somebody behind me. Whoever it was had been drinking bad whiskey, but he was still pretty good. It landed a quarter of an inch above my right ear, and I piled up in a lamp, a chair, and a pitcher full of water.
5 berries gets you a look, brother, but doesn't get you a room. Besides, it's already taken and the bed's over there. Now, come on.
Oh.
You didn't go to sleep, brother. You was knocked to sleep.
Oh.
I apologize. What a game.
Who came in after me?
You're the only one.
You sure?
My name's Sam Preacher. Brother, I'm very sure.
Well, maybe he was waiting for me, huh?
I don't generally ask him, but the question is this. Why?
Oh, I don't know. Unless...
What's the matter? Something missing?
Just a picture.
You can get lots of pictures.
You didn't see anybody?
That makes the 3rd time, brother, and the answer's still negative.
Okay.
Then let's blow, buddy, huh?
Coroner's office.
Luke, this is Regan.
The Lion's Eye. What's with you, baby? When Daddy tells me you walked into one today.
Yeah, I did. You got him there?
Haynes Dudley? Sure. Want to come down and take a look? He's toe-tagged and salted down real pretty.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Them 32 slugs was just incidental. The guy had 4 weeks at the outside.
All right, give it to me.
Haynes Dudley was dying from malnutrition, alcoholism, and a couple other things with long names.
Give me one long name.
Diabetes. He didn't take good care of himself. Funny,
A misspent life.
Somebody's gonna take the gas chamber for nothing.
When Daddy know this?
Sure. And he was wearing a brand new suit, too. We'll sew up the holes. We'll bury him in it.
Well, you aren't finished yet, Luke.
Baby!
A guy with one leg dropped dead in my place a couple hours ago.
It's after 11.
Well, I'm sorry, Luke.
They connected?
Yeah?
Murder?
Yeah.
Well, come down and see us anytime, Regan. We're open 24 hours a day.
Well, at the homicide office, they told me she'd been released about 10 o'clock. They said a lawyer named Henderson had put up the bail and handled the whole thing. They gave me an address on her when I went out there. It was a bungalow court on Normandy, and it took her a long time to answer the door.
Oh, you.
Yeah, tell me how tall I am.
Well, I'd love to, but not right now.
They told me you'd been out since 10 o'clock. Maybe I should have come sooner.
J.O. gives me the willies. I'm about to take a shower.
I was kind of hoping we could have a drink.
I did better than I thought with you.
I got a hold of a lawyer for you, didn't I?
Yes?
Well, doesn't that rake me an invitation to have a drink?
I said later, I'm really tired.
I said no.
Well, if you're that thirsty, all right.
That's better.
Isn't every day my boss gets killed and I meet a private detective?
I need a drink. I was slugged tonight.
Slugged?
Yeah, right here, see?
Oh, it looks nasty. Why didn't anyone do that to you?
Wanted a picture I had?
Whistler's mother?
Just a picture of a couple of drunks who are dead now.
Maybe whoever did it was a relative.
Guess again.
I don't like games.
But you play them all the time.
Well, don't we all? I know a psychiatrist who says we can't help ourselves.
You can.
I liked you when you walked into the office this afternoon, but I'm not so sure I like you now. Maybe you better go.
Expecting somebody, huh?
What are you doing? You let go of me. Let go
Oh,
of
no,
me.
baby. You got real nice eyes. I want to look at them.
Let go. He's crazy. You.
Hello, Dave. We didn't hear you knock. Did you bring your piano?
What's the idea?
He gave me.
Why don't you tell him to go away, baby? Anybody can tell we're busy.
Let it go, Regan.
You want to break us up?
Can't you see he's just trying to make you jealous and say things?
Come here, honey.
No. You don't have to do that.
I said let her go.
That the same 32 you killed a one-legged man with?
Over, Gumshoe.
Don't be a fool.
Stay right where you are, baby. You're first.
Listen to me, Daddy.
I listened to you too long.
He's only guessing. He doesn't have any proof of anything.
You can cry if you want to, baby. This is going to hurt.
She spun around and fell into a coffee table and then lay very quiet on the rug. Her eyes were open and she didn't say anything. She just lay there looking up at him. I couldn't tell where she'd been hit. He seemed to forget all about me because he walked over to her, knelt down beside her, put the gun right up against her head.
This is awful close range, baby, but I can't afford to miss.
Neither could I. Well, when Daddy and I stuck our heads together and it all came out when we looked into a couple of things, You see, Dave Henderson was Dudley Haynes, and he was wanted for attempted murder and embezzling and one thing or another back in Ohio. So he figured it'd be a good idea to bump himself off. Dorothy helped him with the idea. They both went down on Main Street, and they picked up an old bum, dressed him up in a new suit, and shot him. I was supposed to walk in with Dorothy, and she'd identify the body, and as far as anybody knew, Dudley Haynes would be dead. Dave didn't figure that she'd be taken down. She didn't figure that she'd get scared, and neither of them figured the man with one leg was a pal of the man that they'd shot. Well, it seems that they'd looked through a lot of files, and they'd figured that a lot of murders go unsolved. Maybe they do. I don't know. Well, anyway, he sat down on that little bench up there in San Quentin last week. The one with that bucket of acid in the room. Oh, he held his breath as long as he could, but everybody has to breathe. He's buried up there with a lot of other guys that figured they could get away with murder. Dorothy? She wasn't hurt too bad. They had her in a wheelchair for the trial. She got 15 years as an accomplice. Some kind of a deal. State's evidence and all that. I don't think I'll wait for her. She wasn't that good.
Jack Webb is featured as Jeff Regan, with Wilms Herbert as Anthony J. Lyon. It's CBS at 9:30 next week for more hard-boiled action and mystery with Jeff Regan, Investigator. Written by E. Jack Newman and produced by Sterling Tracy. Dorothy Nolan was played by Betty Lou Gerson, and David Ellis was Dave Henderson. Lorene Tuttle, William Conrad, and Lou Krugman supported. It's perfectly natural and wholesome for some men to want to leave great wealth behind. There's a druggist in a small town in Pennsylvania who'll do that. The wealth he'll leave behind will make many lives easier and happier and finer down through the years. For he was the principal donor of an outdoor meeting place for religious services in a Boy Scout camp in the Poconos. Working with his neighbors in community activities, he saw the need of this improvement, helped to install it. That's the kind of wealth that you can bequeath to generations coming on as you enjoy the freedom of working with your neighbors for the betterment of your community. Freedom that can be anybody's pleasure is everybody's job. Music for this program is arranged by Dick Arant. Next week at 9:30, Jeff Regan, Investigator, brings you another thrill-packed half hour with his story of the House by the Sea. Bob Stevenson speaking. This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Yes, you'd never guess, but Avalon's cost only 10 cents plus city or state tax. Be with us next Saturday evening at the same time when the Brown and Williamson Tobacco Corporation will again present Avalon Time. Del King speaking. Good night. On the show tonight, the tune I Poured My Heart Into a Song, which is from the production Second Fiddle. Avalon Time reaches you from our Chicago studios. This is the National Broadcasting Company.
Welcome back, Pilgrim. Yeah, they use Pilgrim again. I'm just going to keep noting that till we get to an episode where we don't hear Pilgrim. I have to say, CBS, of all the networks, is the one that was most willing to do long-term broadcasts for months on end on a sustaining basis. This week's show was brought by Pay Your Taxes and Give Your Money to Charity When You Die. Funny, because CBS tends to be the one that will do that the most. And that may be why they produce some of the best radio, because they didn't wait for a show a company to be willing to step up and to buy the whole show. Most of the Johnny Dollar episodes were not. There wasn't any sponsors, so it was just pay your taxes and give and leave your money to charity in your will. Happy Land has to be one of the most misnamed amusement parks out there. You know, even before Regan told about the guy dying, the lady there was just absolutely surly and rude. And I think that somebody gave the police lieutenant way too much coffee before that episode. Either that or this is a recording with a sped up Wendetti. All right, and I want to go ahead and welcome Denise on as a premium subscriber. She got a 6-month subscription. And if you're interested, go to premium.greatdetectives.net. We have lots of extras we post over on the premium site, including commentaries on the movies we play. Also, we have a comment on Facebook. Tony writes that he's been listening to old-time radio podcasts for 2 months. I found the Johnny Dollar episodes pretty good, along with Box 13. I was amazed how much Jack Webb did back in the 40s and 50s playing the private eye or the heavy. Keep up the good work. By the way, on many shows, I heard advertisements for a show called Last Man Out. Do you have any of these shows left or any history on them? Thanks. There's only one episode in circulation, and it doesn't really fit with a detective show. But I'll be glad to tell you what little I could find on it. It was actually a show that was about communism, but it was different than a lot of the spy shows out there. Like I Was a Communist for the FBI. It was hosted by writer Richard England. And Time Magazine wrote about him that he wants to get the last man out of the Communist Party, the man America needs most. As English explained on his first program, when a drunk quits, he can go to Alcoholics Anonymous. When a commie gets out, he has no place to go. Maybe this program can do something about that. And it was really a different show than a lot of the spy shows. The spy shows, to be honest, I think could make life very difficult for a communist. If all you knew about communist was what you heard on, say, I Was a Communist for the FBI, then you would assume that anybody who was at any time affiliated with the Communist Party would be involved in, say, espionage with the Soviet Union and Eastern Bloc nations. And while some of that went on, a lot of people never got involved in anything like that. They got involved because of things that they were concerned about, that they thought the communists were going to address, and they became disenchanted with that. And that was really the type of person that Last Man Out was trying to reach. The show ran for 6 months, never really got a sponsor, and in some ways it was definitely, I think, a humane approach to reach out to some people who'd gotten involved in the Communist Party and not say in anything that was illegal, but to kind of give them a way that they could feel that they could leave, that they could tell their story, and in that way undermine communism. It was a very interesting approach. It didn't work out on the radio. Spy stuff may have been a bit more exciting, but yeah, that was Last Man Out. And I hope that answers your question. But with that said, let's get into today's show. It's the Impatient Redhead. Let's go ahead, we'll listen, and then we'll come back.
Standard of California, on behalf of independent Chevron gas stations and standard stations throughout the West, invites you to Let George Do It. The Impatient Redhead, another adventure of George Valentine.
Personal notice, danger's my stock and trade. If you feel you're trapped and can't see your way out alone, you got a job for me, George Valentine. Write full details.
Dear Mr. Valentine, if this sounds like a letter to a lovelorn column, that's exactly what it is. I've been seeing a man for the last 6 months. I love him, and I can swear he loves me, too. I must know what it is that's keeping him from admitting his feelings. What is he afraid of?
Is there a secret in his life he can't share with me? All this you must find out.
Must find out because I must bring things to a head somehow. I shall be in my apartment at the Raleigh Towers all day waiting for you. And it's signed Blanche Legler.
Legler. Blanche Legler. Yeah, that'd be the daughter of the late beer baron, Otto Legler.
Sure, Legler's Lager, the brew with tradition.
Yeah, she must be worth millions, Brooksy. I wonder what does make this guy so backward about being forward.
Well, maybe the gentleman has a wife and 4 kids in Hackensack.
Well, there's no harm in talking to Blanche. No matter what happens, I bet you get a cold bottle of beer out of it.
Well, you know I'm dying of curiosity. But I've got to stay here and wait for that long-distance call you're expecting from Detroit.
Oh, well, now, don't take it to heart, Angel. Whatever Blanche Legler has to confide, I'll let you have it in gaudiest detail. See you later.
Look at me, Mr. Valentine.
That doesn't take any effort at all, Miss Legler.
Oh, stop being coy. I don't need that reassurance.
Well, suppose you stop quarter-decking up and down. Then maybe we can find out just what you do need.
All right. Maybe you've read some things about me in the paper. I make good copy. They say my father spoiled me. And I'm used to getting what I want.
Words to that effect.
Vicente Montoya is something I want. I know he loves me. I can feel it. I can see it in his eyes. But what happens? All I get is that continental charm and gentility until it almost makes me sick.
Sit down, Miss Legler.
I can't. I'm too nervous. I've done everything but get down on my knees to propose to Vicente.
Miss Legler.
Let's make it Blanche.
All right, Blanche. Now, aside from the glint in his eye, how do you know you're the only woman in this life?
Oh, I know there have been others, George. One after another for a year, and all of them redheads.
Well, that's very interesting. You're right in the tradition, then.
Yes, there was a parade of redheads. Every night a different one, sitting with him at the same table in the Oval Room at the Stafford Hotel. But for the last 6 months, I've been the only one.
Well, Blanche, maybe you're playing it wrong. It might be a good idea if you were on the defense. Play hard to get, instead of leading with your left.
Oh, don't be naive, George. I've tried being elusive and oh, so very feminine. But that doesn't work either.
I see. Well, from what you told me, this Vicente character is an exceedingly polished gentleman, the son of a Spanish marquess and stuff.
So what? Take another look at me. Is it such a come down for him to marry me?
Okay, Blanche, I admit the odds are with you, unless the man is blind.
Thank you.
But I'll be equally frank. Throwing out male icebergs isn't exactly my racket. Nor is snooping into people's private lives, except when they've definitely strayed from the straight and narrow.
Can't you use a big fat fee?
Oh, sure, always. But not if it's going to make me unhappy with myself.
Suppose I can assure you it won't be snooping.
I bet you're good at cryptograms.
I'll show you what I mean. Here, in the drawing room.
Blanche, what is it? I received your call and... Oh.
Do you realize, Vicente, this is the first time we've seen each other during the day? It's always been the Oval Room at night.
That is no matter. Is there anything wrong?
Oh, this is Mr. Valentine, Mr. Montoya.
How do you do?
How do you do?
Vicente, this seems to be the day for frankness.
Como?
I hired this man to find out what it is that stands between us, darling.
You did this, Blanche? Why? Why?
Now, look.
Oh, come now, George. You can't call it snooping when we put all our cards on the table.
That you did this is very unfortunate, Blanche.
Well, what did you expect me to do? Do you think I sat there all those evenings just to sample all the rare wines you ordered with such authority? Or indulge in glib conversation?
Please, Blanche.
Whatever's keeping you from saying what you feel I want to know, bring it out in the open. I'll stand by you, Vicente.
Was there not a young man named Tommy Sloan? I should never come into your lives, Blanche. Goodbye. Oh, Mr. Valentine.
Yeah?
I know Blanche's power of persuasion, but if I were in your place, I would not pursue this matter any further. It would bring no good to anyone, especially you.
What's that supposed to mean?
This just happens to be a day for frankness, as Blanche says. Adios.
Well, George?
Well, in his polite way, Senor Montoya carries a very big chip on his shoulder. I wonder what would happen if I knocked it off.
Why don't you?
I think I will, Blanche. We're in business.
If you
must know, Miss Brooks, I bribed the maid. That's how I know Blanche called in Valentine.
Oh, you've got it bad, Mr. Sloan.
You're not wrong. I can't think, I can't work, I can't do anything.
Well, I don't know what to tell you until we find out what Mr. Valentine's decided to do.
Wait a minute. Miss Brooks, a woman's no different from a man.
Well,
I mean, you can tell when someone's meant just for you and you for him, can't you?
I think I can.
Well, that's the way it's been between Blanche and me for years, until Montoya came along. He isn't right for her, I tell you. They've got nothing in common. It's different between Blanche and me. We know how to laugh together, have fun.
All right, calm down, Mr. Sloan.
Oh. Well, anyway, will you give Valentine this message?
Yes.
Whatever he finds out about Vicente Montoya, I want to know, too. I'm willing to pay for it.
Well, I'm sure that will interest him a great deal.
And you can also add, Blanche will never marry Montoya, no matter what I have to do.
Yeah, Brooksy, that's very interesting about Tommy. But it's hardly news.
Well, you must have got around this morning, darling.
Yeah, and here's the net results. Vicente Montoya is the real thing. More money than he can live to spend. And his father is a Marquese, all right. And listen to the trimmings the old man can tag onto his name.
Yeah.
Grand Officer of the Spanish Legion of Honor, Grand Cross of St. Gregory the Great, Knight of Zaragoza, and so on and so on.
All of which leaves you where, Mr. Dorothy Dick?
Exactly nowhere.
Well, what does this Vicente Montoya look like? What's his great charm?
Oh, I don't know. Call it breeding if you want, Brooksy. But he's handsome besides. Shiny black hair, distinguished. Walks as though he swallowed a ramrod. Oh, yeah. He knows the vintage years of all the best wines.
Oh, poor Tommy.
And the final fact, which I'm sure Blanche already knows, Vicente lives with his father, the Marquese of Montoya, in the sumptuous suite at the Hotel Warwick.
Why don't you just let love take its course? Blanche will either wind up in a suburban cottage or a castle in Spain.
I know. But why the chip on Vicente's shoulder if everything is all sweetness and light? What? Hey, wait.
George, what are you doing?
Just looking at your hair.
Well, you've never looked at it that way before.
Now, look, Angel, this hurts me more than it does you. But you're going over to the beauty parlor and have those lovely locks dyed red.
George!
Huh?
I suppose you wonder why I had the head waiter ask you to come over to my table.
I was curious enough to join you, wasn't I?
I'm very grateful, Miss Brooks. Oh, Henri.
Yes, Senor Montoya.
A bottle of sherry. You know, the only year I think is worthy of a great occasion.
Oh, of course.
The moment you walked in, I noticed your hair. It is truly very lovely.
Oh, thank you.
I'm not just making idle conversation, please believe me. All the men in the Montoya family, as far back as anyone can remember, have chosen women who had red hair.
Oh, no wonder when I walked in you didn't take your eyes off me for a moment.
I only know of one woman with red hair more beautiful than yours.
I should get up and leave you, Mr. Montoya. No woman likes to think herself second best. Where's your gallantry?
I'm afraid I lost it, along with a great many other illusions.
Well, we're going to do something about that tonight.
When you came in, I thought you might be able to take her place. Make me forget Blanche.
Blanche?
She's the only woman I ever loved. I'm giving her up.
Oh.
Sherry, senor. The way you like it.
Thank you.
Why did you tell me all this, Mr. Montoya?
Why? So you can run back and tell Mr. Valentine.
What did you say?
Red hair is becoming to you, Miss Brooks. But I can see that it was dyed. Remember, I'm a connoisseur.
Okay. That leaves you the top man on the totem pole.
I beg your pardon?
Skip it. Just let me ask you a simple question. If you love Miss Legler, why are you so willing to give her up?
Why don't you tell Mr. Valentine he will never find that out till the day that I die?
You must excuse me, Mr. Valentine, but I'm really listening.
Okay, have it your way, Marquise, but I don't believe you.
Did you ever think, senor, that in a long life one learns much?
Yes, I know, but about your son.
One learns about many things. Now, these pistols, the largest private collection of Spanish dueling pistols in the world.
Congratulations.
I make it a point to spend an hour a day with them, oil them, polish them, see that they withstand the passage of time. But go on, senor. What were you saying?
All right, here it is. Your son is in love, but he won't dare admit it. Do you know why?
Senor, my son is not a simpering girl. And I'm not a dueña to watch over him every minute.
What is he afraid of? You ought to know. You're his father.
Strange about this pistol. The barrel hardly moves. Let's see.
You're holding on to me, Marquise. I'm a pretty stubborn guy. Hey! Why, that almost took my ear off.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Senor Valentine. I was sure there was no bullet in that pistol.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for missing me.
It does prove something, doesn't it?
Does it?
If you insist on handling something you know is dangerous, you can expect your head to be blown off. No es verdad, senor.
Oh, sure, you're so right, Marquis. And don't think I'm going to forget it.
Maria.
Si, senor.
Please show the gentleman out. He hasn't got all the time in the world. Goodbye, Senor Valentine.
Maybe we'll have another man-to-man talk again, when you're not fussing with your pistols.
Senor, I know that which you are trying to find out. I've been with the Montoyas for very many years.
Why, Maria, I'm surprised at you. You've had your ear at the keyhole.
How much will you pay?
Oh, I have a very liberal client.
$500.
Could be.
My sister's grandchild. That money would mean he could go to the university.
When do we get to talk?
Later tonight. I live in a room at 28 Douglas Street. You will be there.
This ought to be room 6. Brooksy, over here.
Tomorrow I'm going to have the most expensive shampoo at Rudolph's and put it on the office expense account.
Well, you're welcome to it, Angel.
I don't know if it's polite, George, but the door is open.
Yeah, so it is.
George, she's asleep. Maybe it'd be better if we came back in the morning.
Wait a minute, Brooksy. Even when people sleep, they manage to breathe.
But
now, wait. Let me see. Brooksy. Maria's asleep. She's dead.
Oh.
There's no sign of violence.
Maybe this empty bottle on the bed table means something.
I don't know, but this note here does.
What does it say, George?
When you will find me, I am dead. I know now I could not tell you the secret of the Montoyas and go on living in peace and honor, so I do this thing. Forgive me, Maria.
We'll return to tonight's adventure of George Valentine in just a moment. Meanwhile, a word about wear. It's easy to keep the outside and inside of your car spick and span, but how can you keep the interior engine parts clean and efficient? How can you save those expensive, tight-fitting parts from the wear caused by fast-forming carbon, rust, and acids? Engineers at Standard of California licked this problem by developing RPM motor oil. And they did the job so well that a recent survey shows Western motorists prefer RPM 2-to-1 over any other motor oil. Chemical compounds in RPM keep your entire engine cleaner. They protect hot spots left bare and exposed to wear by ordinary motor oils. They prevent costly rust, corrosion, and crankcase foaming. And that's why RPM, a premium quality motor oil, gives your car longer life at low-cost operation. Get it tomorrow at a Standard station or an independent Chevron gas station where they say and mean, we'll take better care of your car. And now, back to tonight's adventure of George Valentine. Well, a fiery, red-headed heiress hires you to find out all you can about a certain Spanish nobleman. He's what she wants. So, with some reluctance, you take the case, only to find yourself threatened with violence on all sides. What's more, the faithful old servant of the Montoya family prefers suicide to revealing the secret that you know is there. But being as stubborn and curious as George Valentine, you pay a visit with Claire to the old Marquise of Montoya.
I don't know if I want to talk to you tonight, Mr. Valentine. Miss Brooks.
Sorry, Marquise, but you're going to have to.
May I get you a glass of sherry, young lady? I'll call Maria. No. Nobody will call Maria anymore. I cannot get used to the idea. You see, she has been in the family so many years.
Which just about brings us to the point, doesn't it, Mr. Montoya?
Yeah, there's no question that Maria committed suicide. But that's not enough for me. What made her do it?
What makes any of us do what we do with our lives?
In the note she left, she said something about not being able to live in peace or honor.
In our country, more important than bread and water, or even life itself, are dignity and honor.
Marquise, you knew Maria was going to tell me whatever it is you and your son are trying to hide.
It is very little I do not know that goes on in this house.
Well, then let's not mince words. You forced her to kill herself.
That is very harsh, Mr. Valentine, and not true.
What is true, then?
I merely reminded her of the years we considered her a member of the Montoya family and the kindness we showed her. I never meant it to be more than a reminder. I never thought that she would go so far.
Uh-huh. But it was better for you rather than have a talk.
Think what you please, Senor Valentine. As far as that young man in Barcelona...
The one Maria wanted the money for?
The one she was willing to forsake all loyalty for, yes. I will take care of him. He will not want for anything. Maria can rest quietly. Oh, Vicente.
Yes, Father.
As you see, we have visitors.
I know. Miss Brooks, I'm sorry about that little fiasco I carried out in the Oval Room. Believe me, I am seldom that rude.
Oh, don't let it worry you, Mr. Montoya. I seldom walk around with blazing red hair.
There's really nothing more to say, Mr. Valentine.
Father, just a moment. I have something to say.
Okay, let's have it.
The last time we met, I said something that may have sounded like a threat. I did not mean it that way.
Now, you know, this is getting rather awkward. Everybody being so sorry about everything. Why don't we just cry on each other's shoulders?
Mr. Valentine, I am serious. I know you are interested only in the welfare of your client.
That's right, Miss Legler.
I realize that most of the fault is mine. You cannot monopolize any woman's time for 6 months without having her make certain obvious assumptions.
What are you driving at?
I give you my word as a gentleman that I shall never see her again. Marriage is completely out of the question. Therefore, the reason can't possibly be important. Would you tell Blanche that and forget the whole thing?
Well, confidentially, friend, I wasn't too happy with this case from the beginning.
Yes?
And if marriage is out of the question, I don't see what good I can do. Yeah, I'll speak to Miss Legler in the morning. And so that's how it is, Blanche. And I'm inclined to agree with Vicente. So how about dropping the whole thing?
Maybe the day after tomorrow. You think that's pretty good advice.
Since I was 4 years old, Miss Brooks, the only advice I've taken was my own.
I want to talk to you, Blanche.
Oh, Tommy, what are you doing here? I told you we have nothing more to talk about.
We'll see about that. You're Valentine, aren't you?
That's the name the mother insisted on. It happened to be my father's name. Now, take it easy, will you, Thomas?
I spoke to Montoya after you and Miss Brooks left.
Vicente certainly had a busy evening.
Blanche, why don't you get it through your crazy little head? Vicente doesn't want you.
Why don't you mind your own business?
Slap me all you want. That won't change things. Isn't that what Montoya said to you, too, Valentine?
Well, he was a little more suave about it.
Look at me, Blanche. I love you. It isn't something that happened just yesterday or 6 months ago. It's been there for years. And you love me, too. You told me there's no changing that.
Oh, Thomas. Please. Please go.
Okay, I'm leaving. But I'm never going to be too far away.
You know, Blanche, I think your friend Tommy has the right idea.
I remember you were saying you wanted to drop the case, George.
I said I thought it would be best.
I may as well tell you I'll only hire someone else.
Well, there's no mistaking that, George.
No, wait a minute, Brooksy.
Changing your mind?
I still think somebody's going to get hurt in this deal. But as long as you're going to get a stand-in for me anyway, I may as well go along for the ride. Oh, now listen, friend. The Spanish news syndicate should know more than that about one of the most prominent families in Spain.
Perhaps, Mr. Valentine, but that's the only information that's available.
Professor Ortega, if there's anybody who knows all about Spanish history, it's you. There must be something about the Montoyas.
Forgive me, young man. I am not a gossip columnist. A historian deals only with the facts, and I gave you those.
No, Mr. Valentine, Miss Brooks, don't apologize. The writer's always looking for an excuse to knock off work.
Oh, that's very kind of you, Mr. Wendell.
The truth is, my dear, I wasn't even working. I just sit here in front of the typewriter in case my wife comes in.
Okay, but what about the Marquis Montoya?
Fascinating old gentleman. Had lunch with him in Seville once. I'll never forget it. He never even cracked a smile.
Wendell, you've written enough books about Spain to be an authority.
Could there be anything about the Montoya family that they go to all this trouble to conceal? I mean, why would a man like Vicente Montoya turn his back on a woman who's beautiful and has a fortune?
Well, there is one story, but I don't know whether I ought to...
What's that supposed to mean?
The Montoya line goes way back, even beyond the time when Columbus became America's first tourist.
Well?
It's hard to separate legend from fact, especially when it has to do with Spain. But there's supposed to be a curse on the Montoyas.
Oh, wait a minute. Now, hold on.
Now, don't look at it that way. There's more fact than legend. Ask a Spaniard about it, and you'll probably get nowhere. But it's all there in the records.
What's in the records? Oh, don't be so mysterious, Mr. Wendell.
Without being too descriptive, Miss Brooks, it seems to have been a strange creature popping up on the Montoya family tree every fourth generation.
Strange creature? What are you talking about, Wendell?
A stunted little beauty. Always about 3 or 4 feet tall, his feet end where the normal man's knees begin. And he never has a single hair on his body. The last one I remember being born was in 1828.
Oh, how terrible.
There's probably a very sound scientific reason for it, but I suppose it's much more romantic calling it a curse.
So that's it.
What?
Well, don't you see, Brooksy? That's why Vicente is afraid to marry. Afraid that this thing might happen again to his children or his children's children.
But it doesn't have to happen every fourth generation, does it, Mr. Wendell?
Miss Brooks, I am not an authority on eugenics or the laws of heredity.
Well, thanks a lot, Wendell. This calls for a final chat with the Marquis of Montoya. Just the two of us.
So you did find out, young man.
Oh, I get all kinds of jobs, Marquis. Some I like, some I don't.
Now you understand why it had to be kept a secret.
Mm-hmm. And I'm willing to leave it that way. I'll think of a good reason to give Blanche so she'll have no more questions to ask.
Gracias.
Suppose I say that Vicente has a wife in South America. I think I can even produce a fake marriage certificate.
Could you do that, senor?
I thought you had a reputation for never smiling.
I know, but I never thought that a young man from a young country could have so much understanding, so much.
Well, it doesn't take too much understanding to know what you've gone through, Marquis. The courage and the iron will it took for you and Vicente to live with the Montoya curse.
One does what one has to. But you're right about our leaving the country, Mr. Valentine. I have an estate in Argentina, Vicente, and I will leave for there as soon as we can arrange.
Yeah, I think that'll be best, and the chapter will be closed. Well, goodbye, sir. Good luck. And I mean that.
Adios y gracias, amigo. And I mean that, too.
All right, George?
As right as it can be, Angel.
Un momento. I must come downstairs and see you in Mr. Valentine.
Now, look, there's nothing to worry about, Vicente, so take it easy, will you? I don't know from nothing, and I'm really off the case.
I do not believe it. What did my father tell you? I've got to come downstairs and find out.
Oh, Mr. Montoya, be careful.
I've got to know.
Valentine! Oh, George, he tripped.
Wait, I'll help.
Don't look at me. I don't want anybody to see me this way.
George.
Now you see me as I was born. There are my artificial legs. The wig.
Oh, no.
Now you have your answer. I am the fourth generation.
George, I don't think I'll ever forget the sight of Vicente Montoya scuttling up those stairs.
Well, why don't you try remembering that Blanche and Tommy are going to get married next week? That's a much happier notion.
Yeah. You know something? Well, speaking as a woman, I think deep in her heart, Blanche was happy when you came up with that whopper about Vicente having a wife.
I don't think that white lie will be held against me.
Oh, I'm sure it won't. But, George, when you were inside talking to the Marquise, you suspected the truth, didn't you?
Oh, Brooksy, it was a weird thought I didn't even want to admit to myself. But I kept thinking of Vicente's stiff, mechanical walk.
Yes?
And Wendell did say that last time this happened was about 1828. The next time would be around 1900, about the time Vicente was born.
You know, I think this whole thing was a horrible dream if you weren't standing right beside me.
Oh, but I am here, Angel. And you want me to show you how real that is?
Oh, you're so right.
Maybe you found after a lengthy motoring trip that a warm bath and a good sleep put you right back in shape. But don't forget, your car needs a little attention, too, after a long trip. In fact, every 1,000 miles, your car needs the expert lube service it can get at a standard station or an independent Chevron gas station. For these are the only service stations using RPM greases and oils, each lubricant tailor-made to shield vital wear points from road dust, grit, moisture. Without proper lubrication, spring shackles and other stress points wear down unduly fast, and they make quite a rattle doing it. RPM oils and greases assure longer wear and quieter, softer riding. So when you're in a long trip and every 1,000 miles, ask for lube service where you know it's expert, at an independent Chevron gas station or a standard station, where they say and mean, we'll take better care of your car. Next week, when you tune our way for another adventure of George Valentine, you'll hear...
Well, here's just about everything on the case, except the receipt. Brooksy, I outsmarted myself and missed the boat.
But, George, Jeffries wouldn't break into his own desk to steal it.
It doesn't seem that he... Hey, wait, you know, Angel? Maybe I didn't miss the boat after all.
What do you mean?
Now, look, you get out of here fast, grab a cab, back to the office, but be sure nobody sees you.
But what about you, George?
I'll be back there in a few minutes. And, Brooksy, I'm pretty sure we'll have a visitor.
Tonight's adventure of George Valentine has been brought to you by Standard of California on behalf of independent Chevron gas stations and standard stations throughout the West. Let George Do It stars Robert Bailey as George with Francis Robinson as Claire. Tonight's story was written by David Victor and Herbert Little, Jr. and directed by Don Clark. Also heard in the cast were Jay Novello as Vicente, Lorene Tuttle as Blanche, Pedro de Cordova as the Marquise, Ken Peters as Tommy, and Virginia Craig as Maria. The music is composed and conducted by Eddie Dunstetter. Your announcer, John Heaston. Listen again next week, same time, same station, to Let George Do It. This is the Mutual Don Lee Broadcasting System.
Welcome back. Well, I wasn't expecting quite that end. I was expecting the family secret to be something like they were on the wrong side in the Spanish Civil War. But this was a surprising twist. Don't know how it worked out. I will say that the tactics that were used on George were totally counterproductive to the George Valentine character. The goal of was to get George to back off, and the type of threatening stuff that just made him more curious. I think that without threats or hints like that, I doubt that George would have even taken the case. So you got to know people and know how to approach him, because he's definitely not the guy who will intimidate easily. I do want to let you know that coming up a week from today's show, we're going to go ahead and add the extras for the month of May, and these will be featuring Basil Rathbone. It's going to be a double feature of 2 half-hour radio shows where Basil Rathbone guest starred. So if you've got the app or you've signed up for our premium site at premium.greatdetectives.net, you'll be able to take advantage of those when those come out. Well, before we get into today's episode of Sherlock Holmes, I want to share a brief review of The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, a movie from the 30s. This was the second of, I saw this recently. It was the second of 2 of the Rathbone-Bruce movies to be made by Fox. Now, the Universal films, there's 4 of those 12 that are in the public domain. Those, of course, are the ones that are set in the modern day. The Fox films were actually set in the Victorian era, which I researched, and it was kind of interesting. Setting it Holmes in modern times was actually something that the various adapters of the film had done up until Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce, because they had actually started putting Sherlock Holmes on the silver screen in 1916. Sherlock Holmes' last adventure was set in 1914, and most of the movies were made in 1929. So it was somewhat of a contemporary character, be like a character whose story was set in 1995. If you were writing the movie, you wouldn't try and create the feel of 1995 Boise. You would just tell the story where it was at. And I think that actually, ironically enough, the other films that did go back to the Victorian era were kind of responding and playing off what Rathbone and Bruce did. This was a really good movie. I thought that it was fantastically made. I love the Universal films. But honestly, this one, the action was great, the writing was great. They had about 20 more minutes of plot development time, so that helped. Incredible story. You got Moriarty, Holmes, and the Crown Jewels all in the same movie, so you can't miss with that one. So if you can, get it from Amazon, get it from a video store, or I also recommend Netflix. You can go to greatdetectives.net, click on the Netflix banner, and you get a 2-week free trial, and you can watch The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes for yourself. All right, well, this is going to be a return of sorts. The last about 3.5 months, we have been in truly the new adventures of Sherlock Holmes. Adventures outside of Arthur Conan Doyle's canon. Well, we're going to actually get back into the canon with today's episode, The Problem of Tor Bridge. So let's go ahead, we'll listen, and then we'll come back.
This episode from the life of Sherlock Holmes will be transmitted to our men and women overseas by shortwave and through the worldwide facilities of the Armed Forces Radio Service. Petri Wine brings you Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce in the new adventures of Sherlock Holmes. The Petri family, the family that took time to bring you good wine, invite you to listen to Dr. Watson tell us another exciting adventure he shared with his old friend, that master detective, Sherlock Holmes. And while you're settling back comfortably in your chair, mind if I tell you about something I'd like you to share with me? It's a glass of Petri California Sherry. Of course, most people think of Petri California Sherry as the one wine that's really swell any time, but personally, I like a glass of that Petri Sherry just before dinner. You know, that's the time you're a little on edge. You've just finished your day's work, and you're waiting for your dinner, and, well, that's when you want to lean back and take it easy. And, boy, that's the time a glass of Petri Sherry tastes like something just too good to be true. Try it. Petri Sherry is the perfect before-dinner wine. And, incidentally, if you like your sherry dry, not sweet, then you'll find that Petri Pale Dry Sherry is just made for you. The important thing is the Petri label, because when it says Petri, it always means good wine. And now for our weekly visit with our good friend and host, Dr. Watson. Good evening, Doctor.
Good evening, Mr. Bartell. You're a bit late. I've been keeping some dinner hot for you. Here, pull up your chair and join me.
That's very nice of you. Thanks, Doctor. Are you all set with tonight's story?
Yes, my boy, I'm all set, as you call it. As a matter of fact, I was going over my notes on the case just before you arrived.
Last week, you hinted that a beautiful girl figured prominently in your adventure.
That's quite right, Mr. Bartell. An extremely beautiful girl. In fact, I often used to say to Sherlock Holmes that if I'd been a little younger at the time, I might... Oh, well, you haven't come here to listen to my personal reminiscences. You want to hear the story that I called The Problem of Tor Bridge.
That's what you promised us, Doctor. How did it begin?
On a windy morning in October... In the 1890s it was. As I was dressing, I observed how the last remaining leaves were being whirled away from the solitary plane tree which graced the yard behind our Baker Street house. I descended to breakfast, prepared to find my companion in depressed spirits, for, like all great artists, he was easily impressed by his surroundings. But, to my surprise, he was in an unusually gay mood. As I entered the room, he looked up at me and, with a smile,
My dear fellow, hope you slept well.
Splendidly, thank you, sir.
I'm so glad.
Well, you're very solicitous this morning. I think you must have got a new case. Am I right?
The faculty of deduction is certainly contagious. Yes, I have a new case. After a month of trivialities and stagnation, the wheels revolve once more.
Good. Tell me all about it.
Well, as yet, there isn't much to tell. Have you ever heard of Neil Gibson?
Neil Gibson? Oh, yes, yes, something to do with gold mining, isn't he?
A great deal to do with it, my dear fellow. In fact, he's considered the greatest mining magnate in the world. About 5 years ago, he bought a large estate in Hampshire. Perhaps you've read of the tragic death of his wife.
Oh, yes, of course, I remember the case now. She was murdered by a jealous governess who was in her employ, wasn't she?
That point will be decided when the lady in question, Grace Dunbar, I believe her name is, comes up for trial at the forthcoming Winchester Assizes. In any case, it's hard for me to see what I can do for my client at this late date.
Your client?
Oh, yes, I forgot I hadn't told you. I'm getting into your involved habit of telling a story backwards. Better read this letter. Came this morning.
Oh, let's have a look. Dear Mr. Sherlock Holmes, Miss Dunbar is innocent. I can't see the finest woman in the world go to her death without doing everything possible to save her. I shall call on you at 10:30 tomorrow morning to discuss the matter. Yours faithfully, Neil Gibson. Good gracious me.
There you have it, Watson. That is the gentleman I'll wait.
Do you know anything about his dead wife?
Only what I've been reading in the papers. Apparently she was past her prime, which was the more unfortunate as this Miss Dunbar, who superintended the education of the two young children, is reputed to be a very attractive young lady.
The eternal triangle, eh? Well, where did the murder take place?
On Gibson's estate in Hampshire. His wife was found in the grounds nearly half a mile from the manor house, late at night, clad in her dinner dress, with a shawl over her shoulders, and a revolver bullet through her brain.
Any weapon found near her?
No, there were no clues found at the scene of the crime.
What made them suspect the governess?
Well, in the first place, there was some very incriminating evidence. A revolver with one discharged chamber, the caliber corresponding with the bullet in the dead woman's head, was found on the floor in Miss Dunbar's wardrobe.
Oh, was it? Pretty damaging evidence, Holmes.
So the coroner thought. And to make the case even blacker against Miss Dunbar, the dead woman had a note on her making an appointment at that very spot. And the note was signed by the governess.
It seems obvious that the girl's guilty, and the motive's clear. Mr. Gibson would be a great catch for a young girl. Love, fortune, power, all dependent on one life.
Possibly, Watson, but circumstantial evidence can be very misleading at times. As the gentleman in question, unless I'm very much mistaken, considerably before his time.
I can see him from the window here. Formidable-looking fellow. Must be well over 6 foot tall.
Judging by the way he's wrenching at that doorbell, he's a man with a violent temper.
Mrs. Hudson's opening the door to him now.
Meet him on the stairs, will you, old chap? It'll save Mrs. Hudson a journey.
Sure. Up here, sir. Thank you, Mr. Hudson. All right.
Are you Mr. Sherlock Holmes?
No, indeed. I'm his colleague, Dr. Watson. Come along in, won't you?
Mr. Neil Gibson, I presume?
That's right. So you're the great Sherlock Holmes, huh?
The adjective is your own, Mr. Gibson. Sit down, won't you? By the way, you may speak quite freely in front of Dr. Watson.
Well, I may as well begin by telling you that money means nothing to me in this case. You can burn it if it's any use to you in lighting the truth. Miss Dunbar is innocent, and it's up to you to prove it. Just name your fee.
Mr. Gibson, my professional charges are on a fixed scale. I don't vary them except when I omit them altogether.
Very well. I imagine that you've read the newspaper reports of the coroner's inquest?
Yes, very thoroughly.
I don't see that I can add anything that'll help you. But if there are any questions you'd like to ask, I'll answer them.
Well, thank you. First, what were the exact relations between you and Miss Dunbar?
I suppose you're within your rights in asking such questions, Mr. Holmes?
We will agree to suppose so, shall we?
Then I can assure you that my relations with Miss Dunbar were always those of an employer towards a young lady with whom he never conversed or even saw, except in the company of his children.
Oh. Rather a busy man, Mr. Gibson, and I've no time or taste for aimless conversation. I wish you good morning.
What the devil do you mean by this, Mr. Holmes?
My dear sir, the case is difficult enough without your giving me false information.
Meaning that I lie, sir?
I was trying to express it as delicately as possible, but if you insist on the word, I won't contradict you.
Why, you confounded...
Don't be noisy, Mr. Gibson. Please don't be noisy. I find that after breakfast, even the smallest argument is unsettling. I suggest that a stroll in the morning air and a little quiet thought will be greatly to your advantage.
I suppose I can't make you take the case, but you've done yourself no good this morning, Mr. Holmes. I've broken stronger men than you. No man ever crossed me and was the better for it.
Good morning, Mr. Gibson. You've a great deal yet to learn.
On my soul, Holmes, you were unusually severe with him.
I dislike liars, Watson, and I cannot tolerate arrogance, particularly when it's coupled with great wealth.
Well, how did you know about his relations with the governor?
I didn't. It was pure bluff.
Bluff? It certainly worked. Think he'll come back?
Oh, of course he will. He needs my help too badly. He'll probably change his mind before he's halfway down the stairs. Come in. Mr. Gibson. Just saying to Dr. Watson that I was certain you'd be back.
I've been thinking it over, Mr. Holmes, and I feel that perhaps I was hasty in taking your remarks amiss. Just the same, I can assure you that the relations between Miss Dunbar and me really don't affect this case.
Surely that is for me to decide, Mr. Gibson.
You see, Mr. Gibson, my friend is like a doctor. He wants every symptom before he can give his diagnosis.
Fire away, Mr. Holmes. What is it you want to know?
The truth.
I can give it to you in very few words. To begin with, I met my wife when I was gold mining in Brazil.
Your wife was Brazilian by birth, wasn't she, sir?
Yes, Doctor, and very beautiful. Well, to make a long story short, I fell in love and married her and brought her to England. After a few years, I realized that we had nothing, absolutely nothing in common.
And then I suppose this young governess, Miss Dunbar, arrived on the scene.
That's right, Mr. Holmes. Well, the story should be obvious to you from there.
You fell in love with this girl, I suppose, sir?
Who could help it?
Did you suggest marriage to her?
Yes. Though I knew that my wife would never divorce me.
I see. Then you made an utterly insincere proposition to her.
Now, look here, Mr. Holmes. I came to you on a question of evidence, not of morals. I'm not asking for your criticism.
It's only the young lady's sake that forces me to touch your case at all. Now, tell me, sir, what is your own opinion as to Miss Dunbar's guilt?
It's very black against her. I can't deny that. One explanation of the tragedy did come into my head, Mr. Holmes. I give it to you for what it's worth.
Pray continue, Mr. Gibson.
My wife was bitterly jealous. She was half crazy with hatred. She might have planned to murder Miss Dunbar, or we'll say to threaten the girl with a revolver and so frighten her into leaving us. There might have been a struggle in which the gun exploded and gone off and shot my wife, who was holding it.
Well, that possibility has already occurred to me. It's the only obvious alternative to deliberate murder.
The revolver, Holmes, was found on the floor of the governess's wardrobe.
Now, Mr. Gibson, I should like to examine your house and the scene of the murder as soon as possible.
Certainly, Mr. Holmes. Sergeant Coventry of the local police is still down there. He'll give you any help you may need.
Excellent. Watson, old fellow, out with the timetable. We're catching the next fast train to Winchester.
So if I have to have someone else on the case, I'd rather have you, Mr. Holmes. The yard gets called in, then we local police loses all credit for success. Generally gets blamed for the failures. Now I've heard that you play straight.
I don't appear in the matter at all, Sergeant Coventry. If I can clear it up, I don't ask to even have my name mentioned.
Well, that's handsome of you, I'm sure, and I know your friend Dr. Watson can be trusted, too.
Oh, don't worry, my dear fellow. We won't steal any of your thunder.
Well, that's nice and friendly of you, Doctor. Well, come on, gentlemen. I'll walk you down to the bridge. That's where we found Mrs. Gibson's body. It's not far from the house here.
Well, I must say, Mr. Gibson has a beautiful estate. It must be 60 or 70 acres.
Oh, nearly twice that, Doctor. The woods back of the house there belongs to him, too. Mr. Holmes.
Yes, Sergeant?
There's a question I'd like to ask you. A question I wouldn't ask anyone else.
Then please ask it.
Don't you think there might be a case against Mr. Gibson himself, sir?
I've been considering that possibility.
That there Miss Dunbar's a bit of all right. If you ask me, he wanted his wife out of the way, and the pistol she was shot with was his pistol, you know.
Oh, was that fact proven?
Yes, Doctor. It was one of a pair that he had.
One of a pair. Where's the other?
Well, Mr. Gibson has a lot of firearms. We never quite matched that particular pistol. But the box was made for two.
Well, if it was one of a pair, surely you'd be able to match it.
Well, we have them all laid out at the house if you want to look them over.
We'll do that later. This, I presume, is Tor Bridge.
That's right, sir. Found Mrs. Gibson's body lying right here at the approach to the bridge.
I see. I gathered from the newspaper reports that the shot was fired at very close quarters.
Yes, sir, very close.
Near the right temple, wasn't it?
Just behind it, sir.
How did the body lie, Sergeant?
Oh, on spec, Doctor. No trace of a struggle, no marks, no weapon. The note from Miss Dunbar was clutched in her left hand.
Clutched, you say?
Yes, sir. We could hardly open the fingers to get at it.
That's of greatest importance. It excludes the idea that anyone could have placed the note there after death in order to furnish a false clue.
What did the note say, Sergeant?
Little enough, Doctor. It just said, I will be at Tor Bridge at 9 o'clock, and it was signed Grace Dunbar.
Miss Dunbar admit writing it?
Oh, yes, sir.
What was her explanation?
She wouldn't say nothing. Said she was saving her defense for the trial.
Yes, it seems odd that Mrs. Gibson was still clutching that note.
Seems perfectly natural to me.
Oh, come now, old fellow. Argue the thing out logically. If the letter is genuine, it was certainly received sometime before the tragedy, say an hour or two. Why, then, was the dead woman still clasping it in her left hand? Why should she carry it so carefully? She certainly didn't need to refer to the note at all at the interview. Doesn't it strike you as rather strange?
Well, now you put it that way, it does seem a little peculiar.
Hello. Did you notice this, Sergeant?
Oh, you mean that chip out of that stone on the underside of the parapet of the bridge, sir? Yes, I noticed it. Didn't think nothing of it, though.
It's a very large chip.
Yes, but it's been done recently. That is how the stonework is white just here. It took some violence to do that. Hand me your cane, Watson, will you?
Here you are, Bullet.
Thanks. Yes. It's a hard knock. And in a curious place, too.
But it's 15 feet from where we found the body, Mr. Dow.
Yes, Holmes, I don't see how it could have any connection with Mrs. Gibson's murder.
Possibly it hasn't. But it's a point worth noting. There were no footprints, you say, Sergeant?
None, Mr. Holmes. The ground was as hard as iron. It's been a very dry summer, and we haven't had any rain to speak of this
year. Well, Sergeant, I'm much obliged to you, and now I think we'll get back to the house.
Right. Cesar will show you where the firearms are, sir.
Oh, who is Cesar?
Funny kind of a bloke. Brazilian he is.
Brazilian, eh? Like Mrs. Gibson?
Yes, Mr. Holmes. Comes from the same town that she does, as a matter of fact. Something very fishy about him, if you ask me. Now, if you'll excuse me, gentlemen, I'm going to take a little stroll around the grounds. You started me on a new train of thought in this case, Mr. Holmes.
Oh, I'm delighted, Sergeant. I'll get back to the house. I see. And these are all the firearms in Mr. Gibson's possession, eh, Cesar?
Except for the revolver that is missing from the case. Yes, so I say I've seen him.
I've never seen such a collection of guns and revolvers in my life.
Mr. Gibson had many enemies, senor. He always sleep with a loaded pistol beside his bed. He's a man of great violence. There have been times when all of us were afraid of him.
Did you ever witness physical violence towards Mrs. Gibson?
No, senor. I cannot say that I have. But I have heard him say many terrible things to her. He would taunt her in front of we servants. I have heard him do it many times.
Thank you, Cesar. That will be all.
Muito bem, senor.
You know, Holmes, I still think the case against Miss Dunbar looks very black.
I should agree with you if it were not for one fact. The finding of the revolver in her wardrobe.
On the soul, Holmes, that seems to me the strongest evidence of all.
I think not, old chap.
Huh?
We must look for consistency. Where there is a want of it, we must suspect deception.
I don't quite follow you.
Suppose for a moment that we visualize you in the character of a woman who in cold, premeditated fashion is about to murder a rival. You've planned it. A note has been written. The victim has come. You have a weapon. The crime is well done. It has been workmanlike and complete. You mean to tell me that after carrying out so crafty a crime, you'd be so stupid as to forget to fling the incriminating revolver to the bottom of the stream? Or perhaps in the dense reeds that border it? Would you carefully carry it home and put it in the first place that would be searched? Your wardrobe?
Well, perhaps in the excitement of the moment one...
No, my dear chap, I won't admit that's even possible. When a crime is coolly premeditated, then the means of covering it are coolly premeditated also.
Well, then if Miss Dunbar didn't shoot Mrs. Gibson, who the devil did?
I hope I can give you the answer to that question, Watson, when we've made one further visit.
Oh, Lord. Where are we going now?
To prison, old chap.
Prison?
Yes, we're going to Winchester Prison to call on Miss Dunbar. I'm certain that the key to this strange mystery lies in her hands.
You'll hear the rest of Dr. Watson's story in just a few seconds. Just time enough for me to remind you that the easiest way to make good food taste better is to serve that good food with a good Petri wine. If you like a red wine, well, you want a Petri California Burgundy. If you'd rather have a white wine, then you want a Petri California Sauterne. But red or white, Petri Burgundy or Petri Sauterne, you're choosing a dinner wine that's sure to turn a simple meal into a feast. Your whole family and all your friends will love Petri, the wine that makes good food taste better. And now back to Dr. Watson and tonight's Sherlock Holmes adventure, The Problem of Tor Bridge. Well, Doctor, did you go to Winchester Prison and see Miss Dunbar?
We did, Mr. Bartell. An hour later, I found the two of us sitting in a dank and gloomy cell, talking to one of the most beautiful girls that I've ever seen. Her bright, flashing eyes and her air of quiet confidence seemed sadly out of place in such a setting. Holmes spoke to her quietly, soothingly.
Dunbar, tell us of your true relations with the dead woman.
She hated me, Mr. Holmes. She hated me with all the passion of her distorted mind.
Please tell us exactly what happened on the evening of Mrs. Gibson's death.
Well, I received a note from her in the morning. A note imploring me to meet her at the bridge after dinner that night. She said she had something important to say to me.
Did you keep that note, Miss Dunbar?
No, Doctor. She asked me to destroy the note, so I burned it in the schoolroom grate. I saw no reason for such secrecy, but, well, I did as she asked.
And yet she kept your reply very carefully. It's interesting. Tell me what happened when you met her that night.
When I reached the bridge, she was waiting for me. I won't tell you what she said, but she poured out her whole wild fury in burning, horrible words. I didn't answer. I couldn't. It was dreadful even to look at her. She was like an insane woman, standing there screaming disgusting insults at me. I put my hands to my ears and rushed away.
Where was she standing when you left her?
Within a few yards of the spot where her body was found later.
And yet, presuming she met her death shortly after you left her, you heard no shot.
No, I heard nothing. But I was so upset, Mr. Holmes, that I rushed straight back to my room.
Did you leave it again that night?
Yes. When the alarm came that Mrs. Gibson was dead, I ran out with the others.
Did you see Mr. Gibson?
Yes, Doctor. He had just returned from the bridge when I saw him. He had sent for the doctor and the police.
This pistol that you found in your room, have you ever seen it before?
Never, Mr. Holmes, I swear it.
When was it found, Miss Dunbar?
Next morning, when the police made their search. It was on the floor of my wardrobe where I keep my shoes.
You had no idea how long it had been there?
Well, it hadn't been there the morning before.
How do you know?
Because I had tidied up the wardrobe that day.
I see. Then someone must have come into your room and placed the pistol there in order to incriminate you.
I'm certain of it.
When could they have done that?
Well, it could have been at mealtime, or when I was in the schoolroom with the children.
Yes. Miss Dunbar, on examining the scene of Mrs. Gibson's death, I noticed that a piece of stonework on the underside of the parapet of the bridge had been broken away. Can you suggest any possible explanation for that?
Oh, surely it must have been a mere coincidence, Mr. Holmes.
Possibly. But why should it appear at the very time of the tragedy and at the very place? Could it possibly be that... Why, yes, of course. Idiot. Why didn't I think of it before? Come along, Watson.
Where are we going, Holmes?
Back to Thor Bridge, old fellow. As fast as we can get there.
What have you found out, Mr. Holmes?
The answer to this mystery, I hope, my dear young lady. You will get news before the day is out. And meanwhile, take my assurance that the clouds are lifting and that the light of truth is breaking through.
Well, Mr. Holmes, you're soon back here. What have you found out?
Sit down a few moments. You got my message?
Oh, yes, sir. Here you are. Ball of twine. What you wanted for, I can't imagine.
You'll soon see, Sergeant. Watson, I have some recollection that you usually go armed on these excursions of ours.
Yes, I'm carrying my revolver. Why?
Give it to me, old chap, will you?
What?
Thanks. I believe your revolver may have a very intimate connection with the mystery we're investigating.
You're joking.
Now, Watson, I'm very serious. We have a test to make. If the test is successful, Miss Dunbar will be free before nightfall, and the test will depend on the conduct of this revolver of yours. Yes, I'll take the precaution of unloading it. There we are. Now, Sergeant, ball of twine, please.
Wish I knew what you was up to, sir.
I tie one end of the twine like this to the handle of the revolver. So. Sergeant, see if you can find me a heavy stone, will you?
Oh, right, yes, sir.
Holmes, what are you doing?
Trying to reconstruct the killing of Mrs. Gibson. But you've seen me miss the mark before, Watson. I have an instinct for such things, and yet it has sometimes played me false. It seemed a certainty when it first flashed across my mind in Miss Dunbar's cell. But one drawback of an active mind is that one can always conceive alternative explanations which would make our scent a false one. And yet, oh, well, we can but try.
Here's a nice stone, Mr. Holmes.
Thank you, Sergeant.
Yes,
now,
sir.
I tie the other end of the twine to the stone. Wait a minute. Like that. Splendid. Sergeant, will you please take this stone and stretch the twine across the parapet of the bridge there, so that the stone will swing just clear of the water on the other side of the bridge?
Right, yes, sir.
I'll stand on the spot where Mrs. Gibson's body was found. That's it, Sergeant. Over the parapet.
How's that, Mr. Holmes? The stone swinging about 8 feet above the water.
Splendid. Now, Watson, watch closely. I raise the revolver to my head.
Careful, Holmes, careful.
Don't worry, old chap's not loaded. Now, let us imagine I am the late Mrs. Gibson. I raise the revolver to my head and fire it. Instantly, my fingers release their grip and... There's your answer, Watson.
Great. Scott, the revolver flashed back out of your hand, struck the parapet of the bridge, and then the weight of the stone flipped it over into the water.
Was there ever a more exact demonstration? Come on, old fellow.
You're a blooming magician, Mr. Holmes. That's what you are. A blooming magician.
Look at that. Observe the second chip on the stonework, the parapet here. Same size as the first.
And the murder of Mrs. Gibson...
Wasn't murder at all. It was suicide.
What?
We can follow the various steps quite clearly. A note was extracted very cleverly from Miss Dunbar, a note which made it appear that she had chosen the scene of the crime. Mrs. Gibson, in her anxiety that the note should be discovered, somewhat overdid it by holding it in her hand to the last. That alone should have excited my suspicions earlier than it did.
So she stole one of her husband's revolvers
and planted the other one in Miss Dunbar's wardrobe.
Exactly. After discharging one of the cartridges, which she could easily do in the woods without attracting suspicion, she then went down to the bridge, where she contrived this exceedingly ingenious method of getting rid of her weapon. When Miss Dunbar appeared, she used her last breath in pouring out her hatred, and then, when the girl had left, carried out her terrible purpose.
Then the missing revolver...
You'll find it with the aid of a grappling hook at the bottom of the stream, and also the stone and the string, with which this vindictive woman attempted to disguise her own crime and fasten a charge of murder on an innocent victim.
Yes, Sergeant, and don't forget while you're at it that my revolver's down there, too.
Oh, don't worry, Doctor. I'll get some grappling hooks right away.
I must say, Holmes, you've solved this case brilliantly. Quite brilliantly.
I disagree, old chap. And I fear that you will not improve my reputation by adding the case of the Tor Bridge mystery to your annals.
Oh, nonsense, but that's ridiculous.
Oh, no, it isn't, old boy. I've been sluggish in my mind, and wanting in that mixture of imagination and reality, which is the very basis of my art. I confess that the chip in the stonework was a sufficient clue to suggest the true solution, and I blame myself for not having attained it sooner.
Well, Holmes, personally, I agree with the sergeant's opinion of you.
Oh? What was that, old fellow?
You're a blooming magician, Mr. Holmes. That's what you are, a blooming magician.
Well, Doctor, Holmes really was a magician. That is, if you did find Mrs. Gibson's revolver and your own in the string.
Oh, you found them all right. You don't think I'll tell you the story otherwise, do you? What do you take me for, anyway?
Well, now that you ask, I'll tell you. I take you for a very charming gentleman, a wonderful storyteller, and a fine host.
Oh, yes, well, I do. Really.
Well, you are a gentleman of the old school. And you do tell a fine story.
You flatter me, you...
And you are a perfect host. That meal we had tonight was wonderful.
Oh, it was,
And, that wine, what kind was it?
It was Petri wine, and you know it. And I should have known that you were leading up to something. Mr. Bartell, you should be ashamed of yourself. You will do anything to get a chance to talk about Petri wine. Oh, I can't say that I blame you.
Well, honestly, Doctor, I meant everything I said. But you don't really want me to stop talking about Petri wine, do you? After all, it's worth talking about, isn't it? What other wine is made with the loving care that goes into Petri wine? Don't forget, Petri wine is made by the Petri family. Winemaking is their business. Why, they've been making wine for generations, handing down from father to son, all their skill and knowledge and experience. You can be sure the Petri family really knows plenty about the fine art of turning luscious grapes into delicious wine. That's why, whether you want a wine for before dinner, with dinner, or for any time, you can't go wrong with a Petri wine, because Petri took time to bring you good wine. And now, Dr. Watson, what new story are you planning to tell us next week?
Well, next week, Mr. Bartell, I'm going to tell an adventure that Holmes and I had amid the oriental magnificence of a Maharaja's palace in India.
India? Sounds intriguing. What were you and Sherlock Holmes doing out there, Doctor?
Well, we'll have to wait till next week to answer that question, my boy. But I can tell you that it was one of the weirdest problems that we ever had to solve. I call the story The Vanishing Elephant.
Tonight's Sherlock Holmes adventure is written by Dennis Green and Anthony Boucher and is adapted from the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle story, The Problem of Tor Bridge. Mr. Rathbone appears through the courtesy of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer and Mr. Bruce through the courtesy of Universal Pictures, where they are now starring in the Sherlock Holmes series. The Petri Wine Company of San Francisco, California, invites you to tune in again next week, same time, same station.
Oh, the Petri family took the time to bring you such good wine. So when you eat and when you cook, remember Petri wine.
To make good food taste better, remember...
Petri wine.
This is Harry Bartell saying goodnight for the Petri family. Sherlock Holmes comes to you from our Hollywood studios. This is the Mutual Broadcasting System.
Welcome back. Hearing Holmes beat up on himself for not being quick enough to solve the case, I think it's something. It's a kind of sense of humility and awareness that a lot of heroes tend to show. I think of Horatio Hornblower in his radio series. He tends to think that his accomplishments are not as great as those around him think they are. And I think you kind of see the same thing with Holmes, because he figures he should have solved the case sooner. I have to say, from my perspective, I kind of suspected the solution with Mrs. Gibson, and I was thinking, I just about the times that Holmes solved it, but I thought, nah, that's way too far-fetched, a suicide. But I was wrong. One interesting fact I picked up is this was actually, the problem of Tor Bridge, was actually based on a real-life case in Germany, which the editor of the Strand magazine, where the story was originally published, they brought it to Arthur Conan Doyle's attention, and that's how it ended up in the it ended up being written. And I should mention here that it wasn't that they didn't do the original stories. In fact, they did nearly every Sherlock Holmes story that you can imagine in the first couple of seasons. In fact, this is the second time they did Problem of Tor Bridge. The first time they did it was in November of 1940 on the Blue Network. So, it's been about 5 years. There's a lot of the stories that are missing are their enactments of the Sherlock Holmes canon. One that I would love to for a complete set is they actually did a 6-part version of Hound of the Baskervilles to wrap up in the middle of a season. And all that's left is a fragment of one episode. So we have a few comments on Podcast Alley and Facebook. Sherlock Holmes fan says love, particularly on Thursdays. And then we have a couple suggestions from Facebook. Jolene writes, your podcasts keep me company all day at work. I love the insights that you give leading into the episodes and the comments afterwards. Will you be adding any Nero Wolf? And another one says, Dear Adam, I love the great detectives of old-time radio and Dragnet. Since I discovered old-time radio on iTunes, I rarely listen to anything else on my iPod. I really enjoy the shows, and your commentaries like visiting with a good friend. I've always liked Dick Powell and enjoy his two shows, Richard Diamond and Rogues Gallery. Ever since I was a little kid, I've liked Howard Duff and was thrilled to find him in Sam Spade. So, for what it's worth, I vote for these three shows to make the lineup of great detectives of old-time radio someday. Thanks for all your hard work. Sincerely, Beverly Beaver in Anna Marie, Florida. All right, well, in answer to the request, I think all of these we're going to do, but different people listening at different times. I will say that Rogues Gallery, the way I'm planning it, will be coming next year to the lineup. It's going to take a little bit longer for the other shows mentioned, but Rogues Gallery, we've got a couple of things that'll happen, maybe make a difference of a few weeks, but probably next year. And got a comment here from Robert. I enjoy all the programs. Listen every night to a show replacing TV totally. Glad to hear it, and thanks so much for listening and for all your comments. We'll be back next week, another episode of Sherlock Holmes. And tomorrow, yours truly, Johnny Dollar. And it'll be the premiere of Edmund O'Brien. You won't want to miss it. Comments, send them to box13 at greatdetectives.net. Cast your vote for the show on Podcast Alley, podcastalley.greatdetectives.net. And become a fan of the show on Facebook, facebook.greatdetectives.net. From Boise, Idaho, this is your host, Adam Graham, signing off. And we're going to get into today's episode of yours truly, Johnny Dollar, with our new star, Edmund O'Brien. And then after the show, there were a few more Johnny Dollar episodes starring Charles Russell. And I'll give you a little, some details on that. And before we get into today's show, we'll talk about Edmund O'Brien a bit. Before we do get started, though, I do want to encourage you, as you make your plans, summer is upon us. Graduation, vacations, weddings, all coming up. Remember to try Johnny Dollar Air. JohnnyDollarAir.com is Priceline. So you're able to name your own price on hotels, rental cars, airline tickets, and even more, as well as being able to choose from published specials as well. For great deals on travel, remember JohnnyDollarAir.com. All right, well, Edmund O'Brien is really at this point was kind of in the early to middle part of his career. He was just 4 years away from appearing in The Barefoot Contessa, in which he would win Best Supporting Actor Oscar, as well as a Best Supporting Actor Golden Globe. 10 years later, he would get another Best Supporting Actor nomination and another Golden Globe for his role in 7 Days in May. O'Brien was actually many things. He was an expert magician. He was the next-door neighbor of Harry Houdini growing up. Harry Houdini lived next door. And when he got started in Hollywood, in acting, I should say, he actually started out under Orson Welles at the Mercury Theater. Now, none of the radio episodes have him as a listed cast member, so he may not have made the radio show, and he was also about to start his film career, which he began in The Hunchback of Notre Dame in 1939. Probably the first time I saw him was his appearance on Wonderful World of Disney. If you grew up and saw that at all, and the show about the newspaper boy Gallagher, Further Adventures of Gallagher, he played the newspaper editor Crowley. Brian also played the role of Dutton Peabody in The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. A lot of different roles. We could stay here all day with that. But it's you can check out a website, for Edmund O'Brien at www.edmundobrien.com, and I'll include that in today's show notes. Perhaps the most relevant performance was O'Brien in a picture called The Killers, which I'll talk about perhaps a little bit more next week. But that particular film, he played an insurance investigator, driven, dogged, and perhaps a nice prototype for Johnny Dollar. O'Brien's Dollar is different than Russell's. I think that as we listen to this episode, he's kind of just getting his groove, getting started with this role. It's going to change over time. I've heard some of the later episodes, and he may be one of the biggest tough guys in all of radio, this particular version of Johnny Dollar. O'Brien, of course, had interest in making a radio show before he got the Johnny Dollar spot. He'd done several episodes of Suspense. One, Jim Widner actually played over on the Radio Detective Story Hour, and we'll play here eventually. And he also auditioned for the lead in Nightbeat and lost out to Frank Lovejoy. This episode has multiple names. It's known sometimes as the Loyal B. Martin matter. I do prefer the title, Death Takes a Working Day. That just sounds so good and sets such a great tone for what we're about to hear with Edmund O'Brien. In today's episode, Death Takes a Working Day. Let's take a listen, then we'll come back.
Time now for Edmund O'Brien as...
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Edmund O'Brien, starring in another adventure of America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator, Johnny Dollar. At insurance investigation, Johnny Dollar is only an expert. At making out his expense account, he's an absolute genius.
Expense account, submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to the Great Columbian Life Insurance Company. The following is an accounting of my expenditures during the investigation of the circumstances surrounding the murder of your policyholder, Loyal B. Martin, or how to take a vacation in Fairfield County. Expense account, item 1. $3.20 mileage from Moffett, Connecticut to the country estate of the deceased. I drove up a long cement driveway towards a mausoleum-type manor house. There were rolling green lawns liberally sprinkled with statuary, and the thought occurred to me that if he had spent much of his life here, the late Mr. Martin was most fortunate. He'd feel right at home in a cemetery.
Yes?
My name is Dollar. I'm here to see Mrs. Martin.
Oh, yes. Mrs. Martin.
Uh-huh.
I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. The widow has gone shopping the day after the death of her husband. Something attractive in mourning clothes, I'm sure.
Well, what time is she expected back?
I have no idea. But it shouldn't be long.
Do you mind if I come in and wait?
You'll forgive my asking, young man, but just what is your business here at Loyal Haven?
I was sent here by the insurance company.
Oh, why, yes. Well, then do come in. Here, right in here. I'm Mrs. Tompkins, housekeeper, Mr. Dollar. I was with Mr. Martin for over 30 years. He was a wonderful man.
The furniture also looks like it might have been with Mr. Martin for over 30 years. Victorian, isn't it?
Yes, pure. Loyal... Mr. Martin, that is, was an expert on the Victorian period. Please sit down.
Thank you.
Mr. Dollar, I suppose you'll think it's indelicate of me at this time, but about Loyal's insurance, his policies, did they...
Yes, Mrs. Tompkins, they did. One of his policies leaves you a nice, sizable amount. But before you start counting it, maybe you and I had better have a little understanding.
Yes?
Well, I'm not here to represent the payoff department. I'm here to investigate the murder.
Oh, well, I see.
Yes, before the company pays off, They want to make sure that among the beneficiaries, they don't pay off the murderer, because they really don't have to do that.
Oh, I didn't realize.
No, neither do a lot of people. You know, that's the way quite a few good murders are wasted.
Yes, I suppose you're right. Well, if that's what you're here for, I suppose you'll want to talk to the police. Lieutenant Markwood is in the library. That's where it happened.
Oh, library, huh? Well, that might help. If I can't find any other answers, I can always try looking some up in a book. Which way do I go?
The door, just across the hall.
Thank you. And what a hall. The only thing missing was old Queen Victoria herself. Even the musty odor clinging to the green velvet seemed to have been passed down through the centuries. There was a brace of moth-eaten pheasants on the wall and a bouquet of moth-eaten flowers under glass on a marble-top side table. The library was the same, but there were three things that looked out of place. A, an old suit of armor. B, a glass case filled with new, well-polished sporting rifles and shotguns. And C, a very gruff-looking lieutenant of the police who eyed me as I came in.
And who are you?
Oh, here's my little breath saver.
Oh, yeah, Johnny Dollar. They told me you'd be here. Well, I've told everybody else I better tell you, don't touch anything. They want to re-fingerprint the whole room.
Okay. What'd you find, Lieutenant?
Nothing but the cadaver with 2 bullet holes in his back. Haven't got a caliber report from ballistics yet.
Have you an estimated time of departure?
Yeah, the coroner says Martin died after dinner last night.
Uh-huh. Anything to go on?
Just the usual. Faith, hope, and suspicion. His wife, too young and too pretty for an ugly old buck like Martin, must have married him for his money. Then there's that housekeeper, Sarah Tompkins.
Yeah, I met her on the way in.
And she used to be the old man's intended, from what I can find out. Probably jealous of the young wife. Then there's the brother, Marty. He showed up a few weeks ago, broke and brooding. Probably in love with the young wife. And then there's Nick Bellotti, a private detective who hired himself out as Martin's bodyguard.
Bodyguard, huh? No doubt also in love with the young wife.
Could be.
Well, who's your choice?
Except for the fact that there are only 2 bullets, I think they all did it.
The nose through which Lieutenant Markwood talked was a long one, and in more ways than one, a horn of plenty, for out of it had poured enough motives and suspects to furnish a dozen murders. I started through this cast of characters and found that all of them had very little to say and didn't want to say it. The first I dug up was the bodyguard, my brother investigator, Nick Bellotti, as he returned from a horseback ride.
Glad to have you on the case, Dollar. The police have tied my hands. They told me to stay out of it, but to stick around.
Have you got any ideas?
Everybody seems to think it was an inside job, that somebody in the household did it. I'm not so sure. And the reason I was around was because old man Martin made too many dollars and too many enemies doing it. But that's only my opinion. Why don't you talk to the old boy's younger brother, Marty?
I found Marty living the life of Riley. He was upstairs in his room, cuddled up to a 20-year-old bottle of brandy, which was still underage to be around the kind of book he was reading.
Yeah, I'll tell you something, Dollar. My brother and I never did get along. You'd find that out anyway.
Why'd you come back here, Marty?
Because Loyal's little bride, Joyanne, sent for me. She was afraid of him, and she didn't know if he was on to her.
Was he?
About that, you'll have to talk to Joyanne.
Joyanne didn't get home until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I caught up with her 20 minutes later as she came dripping out of the swimming pool. The suit she was wearing would have gotten her pinched on the Riviera.
Oh, that was refreshing.
It certainly is.
Toss me that towel, will you?
Yeah, surely. Here, Mrs. Martin.
Joyanne, I hate formality. Who are you?
Well, I'm from the insurance company, here to find out whether you killed your husband or not.
Good for you, Mr. Dollar. That's what I like. Men who get right down to the point. I was told you were here.
Oh? Nobody told me about you.
Oh, come on over and learn. I want to stretch out here in the sun. Here, you man the fly swatter.
Okay.
Come on, sit down. Here beside me. If it gets too warm, slip off your shirt.
Oh, thank you. Well, suppose we start talking business. Marty tells me you sent for him to come here because you were afraid of your husband. How come?
Well, I knew Marty before I knew Loyal.
As a matter of fact, he's the one who introduced me to... What do you call a dead husband?
You call him unlucky, I guess. Anyway, for the purposes of this conversation, I'll know who you mean if you just say husband. But you didn't answer my question. I meant, were you afraid of your spouse? And if so, why?
Yes, I was afraid of him. Oh, I might as well tell you, Mr. Dollar. I want to be frank with you. The only thing Loyal didn't have to offer me was love. I seem to be a girl who needs just that. Frankly, I tried to make up the deficit. Mrs. Tompkins, the housekeeper, saw to it that my husband found out about it. From then on, it was like living with a madman. So endeth my confession.
So beginneth my suspicions. What about this housekeeper?
Until I came along, she always thought that Loyal would wind up marrying her. No, don't get me wrong. I realize that I'm still the best jury bait around.
If you killed him, you might make some headway with a self-defense plea.
Thanks. I'll remember that. In the meantime, just in case this thing gets messy for me, and it shows signs, I'm going to spend what's left of my free time enjoying myself.
Well, that won't sound good to a jury, but it sounds good to me. If I spend too much time around here, I might wind up having to plead self-defense myself.
Oh? From me?
No. From that bathing suit. I spent the rest of the afternoon trying to keep two eyes on four people, reading from left to right. Brother Marty stayed in his room, finishing his book and his brandy. Nick Bellotti, the bodyguard with no body to guard, got back on his horse and cantered off into the sunset. The joyous widow, Joy Ann, locked herself in her room, and all I could get through the keyhole was the sound of a light and lovely snore. I couldn't tell whether it was the genuine article or not. Having no way of checking, I picked up the trail of Sarah Tompkins, the housekeeper. She, at least, was apparently up to no good. I found her in the library, doing just what Lieutenant Markwood had told her not to do, smearing the surfaces of Mr. Martin's desk with a dust rag. And as anybody knows, you can't fingerprint a dust rag. Hey, cut it out!
How dare you? Mr. Martin's private study.
Those are the police private fingerprints you're messing up.
I was doing nothing of the sort. I was dusting his desk. I always do it at this time of day. Get out of here. You don't belong in here.
Keep your wig on, Miss Tompkins.
I'll not be told what to do by outsiders. Everything was all right until outsiders started coming in. If it wasn't for outsiders, Loyal would still be alive. First that girl, then his brother and that detective. Now it's the police and you. Why did any of you have to come here? Why couldn't you leave us alone?
Now, calm down, Mrs. Tompkins. Try to calm down.
Yeah, now, what's going on in here? What? Oh, and what are you two lovebirds up to?
It's all right, Lieutenant. I'll tell you about it later.
All right, but get her out of here. I've got some looking to do, privately. Take her down to her room and then come back.
You mean you got something hot?
It ain't cold.
Okay, Mrs. Tompkins, come on.
But I haven't finished in there.
Come on, you can get it later. There's just time for you to take a little rest before dinner.
But I never rest this time of day. He didn't like me to.
Mrs. Tompkins, come on, tell me. Really, why were you wiping off that desk?
Those police this morning scattered white powder all over his desk. He would have been furious with me. He hated any kind of...
The shots had come from the library, and that's where I went, but not fast enough. By the time I got there, Lieutenant Markwood was dead, and whoever had done the shooting was gone, apparently through an open window. Markwood still clutched the shotgun he'd grabbed out of the gun case, but hadn't had a chance to use. Two things had just died in that room, the lieutenant and a hot piece of evidence he'd never had the chance to pass on to me.
In just a moment, we return to the second act of Johnny Dollar. But first, the cream of the wit and the best of the music, which Arthur Godfrey brings you in the daytime on CBS, can now be heard on Godfrey's Digest, a new Saturday evening show heard on most of these same CBS stations. Listen tomorrow night and hear the week's fastest flashes of the Godfrey humor, the top songs sung by Jeanette Davis and Bill Lawrence, the finest singing of the Mariners. Arthur Godfrey's Digest and the Goldbergs are the latest addition to CBS's Great Saturday Nights. Now, with our star, Edmund O'Brien, we return to the second act of yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Hey, what happened? Oh, Markwood.
Yeah, he's dead.
Well, what are you doing, fella?
I'm looking for what there seems to be a shortage of around here, Bellotti. Clues.
You don't mind where you look, do you? Rule number 1, don't get caught frisking dead cops.
Forget about it, Bellotti, will you? Maybe I can suffer from lapse of memory for you sometime.
That's a deal. Got any idea what you're looking for?
No. But whatever it was important enough to get him killed. I'd hope maybe there'd be something in his notebook, for instance.
Any luck?
Well, very little. It's a brand new book, only one notation in it. Here it is. Check tattooing diameter. Recheck penetration. What do you make of that?
It's too scientific for me. I'm a skip case and divorce type detective myself. All I know is you'd better put that book back in his pocket and leave it there.
Yeah, I guess you're right. A nice timing, Bellotti, and remember, thanks for the loss of memory.
Forget it.
Hey, what happened? What's going
Oh,
on
good
here?
Lord. Lieutenant Markwood. Who did it?
Dealer's choice. So far, the dealer's the only one who knows.
First my brother, now Lieutenant Markwood. There'll be real trouble about this.
Johnny, shall I call the police?
Drop the innocent act, sister-in-law. I'll call them.
No, maybe I better do it, Marty.
If everybody will stop pleading not guilty by wanting to call the police, I'd like to get a word in. The police have already been called. Now, if you'll get out of here, I'd like to try earning my salary. If I had had longer ears and more soulful eyes, I would have been all bloodhound, because I could sniff out the first of the trail. The smell of cordite told me that Lieutenant Markwood's killer had either been inside the room when he fired, or just outside with the weapon pointed through the still open window. Outside, the grass formed a deep, wet rug right up to the house and smothered any immediate hopes I'd had of finding footsteps. But 10 feet away, I had better luck. A ray of light from inside spotlighted something that looked like it might be a star witness. It was a .32 caliber revolver. I scooped it up with my handkerchief and went back through the open window to look it over. Under the light, I checked 6 empty chambers and a crimson smear on the walnut grip. If somebody was feeding me a herring, it sure was red. But it wasn't blood. It was lipstick.
I'd like to introduce myself, Dollar. I'm Sergeant Norrin McDougal.
How are you, Sergeant?
Poor Markwood. Thank the Lord he didn't have any wife and kids.
I'm glad to hear that. Cops usually do.
Well, there's one good thing about it. When a police officer goes, there's plenty of them that lives on to fight back. All the police in the world.
You can throw in the private ones, too, Sergeant.
Thanks, Dollar. And now maybe I'd better take your statement.
Well, it won't take long. I heard the shots from the hallway, and I came back. He was killed either from inside the room or just outside the window. I didn't get a look at the killer, but I found what might be the murder gun. Here it is. Watch that handkerchief.
32 caliber.
Yeah, how does that match up with the gun that killed old man Martin, do you know?
Same caliber.
Uh-huh.
Huh. I wonder what he was doing with this shotgun. It ain't loaded, and Markwood knew better than to wave an unloaded gun in the face of a full one.
Did you get anything else out of ballistics, Sergeant?
Headache. Dollar, what we got from ballistics don't add up with what we got from autopsy.
Well, how's that?
Those 2 slugs entered Martin's body an inch and a half apart. But, according to the shallow penetration, they were fired from a distance of 300 yards. Now, do you know anybody who could do that kind of shooting with a .32?
That's pretty fancy shooting. Could it have been done with a stationary mount?
No, not a chance. The body would have started falling after the first shot, and you can't re-aim a stationary mount that fast.
Yeah, you're right. You know, I didn't have a chance to spend much time with Markwood before he got it, so I don't have much to work on. You got anything to spare?
Just a lot of routine confusion so far. You know yourself, Dollar. You take 4 witnesses, you're bound to get at least 2 different stories. 2 of the people that heard the shooting when Martin got killed last night said they heard 2 shots. And the other 2 witnesses said they heard 1. The only thing the whole 4 agree on is that they didn't see anything.
Well, that sounds familiar. Thanks anyway, Sergeant.
Sure, anytime. Hey, Sam.
Yeah?
Take this gun into town. Tell ballistics to run it through for fingerprints and check it against those slugs in the Martin case. I want to report right away.
I hitched the ride with that gun into the ballistics department. While waiting for the test to be made, I asked some questions, and I came up with a real brain buster. Despite the fact that the penetration report said that Martin had been shot from a distance of 300 yards, his skin and clothing had been tattooed with powder, indicating the shots had been fired at close range. The tree that little puzzler put me up would have made the giant redwood forest look like a hedge. Then they gave me the ballistic report. The lands and grooves scored into the slugs by the revolver barrel proved that both Loyal Martin and Lieutenant Markwood had been killed by the .32 caliber gun I'd picked up in the yard. No prints on it. Registered owner, the young lady who looked much better in a bathing suit than she'd ever look in the electric chair. The widow, Joyanne Martin.
Yes? Who is it?
The Hartford Horse Show. Dollar, I want to talk to you.
Oh, I'll be with you in a second. I'm just out of the shower.
Okay. First she was in the pool, now it's the shower. She's also in plenty of hot water.
Hi. Don't pay any attention to my hair.
Don't worry, I won't.
I suppose you think it's a silly time of night for me to be taking a shower, but I thought it might help me to get to sleep.
Well, I'm afraid I won't.
Why, Johnny.
You were pretty careless with that gun, weren't you?
What gun?
Oh, that handy little .32 caliber gun with the handy little registration number engraved on it that told the nasty old police that you bought it 6 weeks ago.
Well, my gun's right here in the drawer. I bought it to protect myself and my husband. Here it is. Oh, Johnny. Johnny, it's gone.
It's real gone. It's done gone and killed 2 men so far. And if you can't do some fast talking and some fast proving, it stands a good chance of shortening your pretty little life expectancy.
Somebody must have stolen it.
Oh, no. That's not even a down payment on a story.
Oh, but Johnny, there's a whole house full of people who could have done it. Not only that, they'd be glad to get me out of the way if they could.
Why?
Well, Mrs. Thompson, because she hates me. Loyal's brother, Marty, because I stand to inherit everything.
What about Nick Bellotti? Doesn't he have an axe to grind?
Well, I don't know what it could be.
Okay, skip it. Tell me, you remember hearing 2 shots being fired around here any time before your husband was killed? Probably away from the house?
Why do you ask that?
Because I want to know, did you?
You amaze me. Yes, I did hear 2 shots. The day before Loyal was killed. I was horseback riding down by the walnut grove. I remember because my horse shied.
Well, this is coming a bit too readily to be readily believed. But how big is that walnut grove?
Not very big.
Yeah? Can you spot those shots a little closer?
Well, they sounded as if they came from about the middle. I didn't stay to find out. I guess I frighten easily.
Yeah, you frighten me easily.
Why, Johnny?
Why? I'll tell you why. Because whether you shot anybody or not, you're a murder baby.
Oh, Johnny, I didn't kill them. Got to believe me, Johnny.
I don't have to. But just for a minute, I will. What is there about police drivers? Even out in the country, they got to lay on those sirens.
Johnny, please.
Come on, you better get dressed, sweetheart. I told them I'd keep you occupied till they got here.
Why, you...
The police took Joyanne and her hurt feelings off to the pokey. I took myself and my hurt cheek off to bed. The next thing I had to do had to be done by daylight. So I took over Joyanne's painfully empty and prettily perfumed sack, set the alarm for dawn, and snort up a storm. I never knew before how much went on in the country so early in the morning. On the way to the walnut grove, the damp air washed the cobwebs out of my head, and I started thinking. Now, first,
Loyal Martin had been found dead with 2 bullet holes in him. Yet 2 of the witnesses, Joy Ann and the housekeeper, Mrs. Tompkins, had heard only 1 shot. Second, that powder burn tattooing on the body, denoting a close-range killing, was in violent argument with a bullet penetration report which screamed long-range killing. Those facts, added to what was in Lieutenant Markwood's notebook, plus that shotgun clutched in his dead hand, came close to tallying up the total that had cost him his life. Inside the grove, I found 4 walnut trees with hollows in their trunks. The first one gave me a handful of nuts and a fancy sassing by an irate squirrel. The second one came up with a handful of spunk water and a wet cuff. And the third, I found what I was looking for. I found about 2 pecks of clean cotton waste. That is, clean, except for some outer burns. Everything was falling into place, including a blunt instrument which hit me on the head from behind. But before I hit the ground, I saw Brother Marty Martin legging it back towards the house. I made it up the house and up the hill and onto the trail, and was just starting up the stairs when I heard another out-of-season 4th of July.
Okay, Dollar. I got him.
Yeah. So I see.
It was self-defense. I had to do it. I hated to butt in on your case, but all of a sudden everything stacked up, and I knew he was your man. When I threw it in his teeth, he made a try for his gun, so I dropped him.
You sure did, Bellotti. Well, I owe you a lot of thanks. But if you don't mind, I'll take over from here.
Sure, help yourself.
Good. And, I think the first thing you'd better do is hightail it into town, get your story filed with the police.
Yeah, I guess you're right. You're all straight now, so you can back me up.
100%, Nick, all the way. Now get going. Come on.
Okay, Dollar. See you later.
Sergeant Norman McDougal.
Yes, sir. Sergeant McDougal.
Johnny Dollar, Sergeant.
Oh, yeah, Dollar. What's new?
Well, just another corpse. And in just about 15 minutes, the guy who made it one and conspired on the other 2 killings is going to walk right into your arms through the station house door.
What? Who is it?
Nick Bellotti, New York private license. He just shot his partner in this thing, Marty Martin.
Well, you're crazy. What about this girl? It's her gun.
That was their fondest hope, Sergeant, to pin it on her. They borrowed her gun, fired 2 slugs from it into some cotton waste, then took the slugs and stuck them in a shotgun shell. 1 shot, just like both ladies said they heard. The shotgun Lieutenant Markwood was looking at when he died was really the Martin murder weapon.
Oh, that takes care of the powder burns and the shallow penetration, yeah. Well, thanks a lot, Dollar. I'll be waiting for him. Hey, wait a minute. What's he walking in here for under his own power?
To tell you an early morning bedtime story, just before you go off duty. He'll give you a pitch about a self-defense killing. It's a lie. The victim wasn't carrying a gun. If he had been, he would have used it on me. But he didn't. He used the sap. The sap. Expense account, items 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. $624 entertainment. Appeasing a rich widow with rich taste. Expense account, items 1 through 13 inclusive, $160 entertainment of poor insurance investigator with extravagant taste. Expense account, item 14, $7.80 mileage New York to Hartford. You may disagree with that item, claiming that I finished the case in Fairfield County. But I didn't finish the case until I left her. And New York City is where I left her. Expense account total, $823. Signed, yours, truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, stars Edmund O'Brien in the title role and is written by Paul Dudley and Gil Dowd, with music composed and conducted by Leith Stevens. Edmund O'Brien can currently be seen starring in the Harry M. Popkin United Artists production, DOA. Featured in our cast were Irene Tedrow, Walter Burke, Ted DeCorsia, John Daner, Gene Bates, and Ed Begley. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, is produced and directed by Jaime Del Valle. Join us again next week when Edmund O'Brien returns in another adventure of...
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Ladies and gentlemen, CBS invites you to hear Senator Brian McMahon on the Capitol Cloakroom over most of these same Columbia stations tomorrow night. Senator McMahon is chairman of the Joint Congressional Committee on Atomic Energy. And when he's interviewed by CBS newsmen Eric Severide, Bill Shadell, and Griffin Bancroft, this will be the first detailed discussion of the hydrogen bomb and its implications. Remember, the first discussion by a high government official since President Truman's historic announcement earlier this week. Remember, that's CBS's Capitol Cloakroom, tomorrow night at 10:30 p.m. over most of these same CBS stations. Be sure and be listening. This is CBS, where, incidentally, Arthur Godfrey's Digest of Wit and Humor is also heard every Saturday night. The Columbia Broadcasting System.
Welcome back. DOA. That was another film that O'Brien made. Excellent premise of a man who finds out he's been poisoned and there's no hope, and he goes searching for the killer. Incredible performance, and I mentioned it a couple of weeks back, but we'll definitely look forward to doing that one. I think that he really brought, O'Brien in this episode really brought a kind of depth, and just the voice I thought was incredible. I thought Russell's voice was interesting. O'Brien really is incredible and hardcore. I think you can tell that the writers are still trying to make the transition here, and that really kind of stands out. It was a fascinating mystery, and I love the way that he closed the deal at the end, sent the killer in to confess, thinking that Johnny Dollar was going to back him up. So I thought that was a classic ending, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun these next 70 or so weeks listening to Edmund O'Brien. Now, as promised before the show, there were 4 episodes after last week's show. One we did previously because it was a Christmas episode. We played it out of order. The next one was the Diamond Protector matter. Then here's one that is often put out as being in existence, but it's really not. This one is called Press Out My Asbestos Dinner Jacket Mother, I'm Going to Smoke. And it's also subtitled The Firebug Hunter Matter. And I think that there's another episode with a firebug in it called with John Lunn in the lead, and that gets passed off a lot. The only way I was able to tell was there was a Wrigley gum commercial in the middle, which was something that happened during the John Lunn era. Plus, the beginning did not match a Charles Russell ending. It was the one that we're going to hear once it's introduced under O'Brien. And that one was on January 7th, 1950. Press Out My Asbestos Dinner Jacket Mother, I'm Going to Smoke. And then January 14th, 1950, The Missing Chinese Stripper Matter. And then the show went off the air till February 3rd and came back with O'Brien. So that's the chronology, and those were the missing episodes. Well, email comes to us. Henry writes, I've noticed on the Great Detective shows that the file name number and the title listing in the file properties do not always match, FYI. Well, thanks for that. I know that sometimes I uncover that the name of a file that it's been popularly given, and this happens with, sometimes I'll check the digital deli and I'll find out the titling is wrong. In that case, I correct it in the voice file, I correct it in the text of the episode when I'm writing the show notes, but I don't always remember to do it in the file name. So thanks for catching that. I'll try to remember to email Andrew Rhines or change it myself before I send it off for editing if the show name is going to be different than what the than where I got the file from. If the show is mislabeled, I'll change that in the appropriate place. Finally, we have a comment from Chris. Awesome podcast. Adam is a great host, and his commentary helps give information about the time period, the actors, and little tidbits on the shows themselves, such as the writers. I would highly recommend this podcast to anyone. Thank you, Adam, for what you do. Well, thank you so much for your comment, Chris. And again, I encourage everybody cast your vote on Podcast Alley. This will be out on the 30th, so if you've not voted, please vote today and then vote again in May. Once a month, I encourage everybody to do that. Podcastalley.greatdetectives.net. Send your comments into box13 at greatdetectives.net. And as always, feel free to give us a call, 208-991-4783. That's 208-991-GREAT-D. From Boise, Idaho, this is your host, Adam Graham, signing off.